with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, November 9th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Alex Kane of Jewish Currents magazine will be with us to discuss the censorship of pro-Palestine voices. And later in the show, Shah Meer Baloch of The Guardian will join us to talk about the Afghan refugee crisis in Pakistan. Meanwhile, Blinken floats a Palestinian Authority takeover of the Gaza Strip after Israel's bombardment ends. That begs the question, when will it end, and what about what the Palestinians want?
Let's just do some more colonial manipulation.
Yeah, no democracy for Palestinians, please. Meanwhile, Hamas is reportedly negotiating terms for releasing hostages to pause the bombing for 3 days. And the White House says Israel has agreed to 4-hour bombing pauses on a daily basis. But Netanyahu again rejects calls for a ceasefire, as a senior United States official admits the Gaza death toll of 10,500 is likely an undercount. Half of Democrats disapprove of Biden's response to the conflict, an AP poll finds. And more than 100 staffers staged a walkout yesterday demanding a ceasefire. Meanwhile, SAG-AFTRA reportedly reached a tentative agreement with the studios, ending an 118-day strike. Rank and file voting next. The third Republican debate was last night, minus the guy with the 43-point polling lead. Meanwhile, Republican strategists are begging congressional candidates not to campaign on a national abortion ban. Reports of ballot shortages in multiple majority black precincts in Mississippi's Hinds County. Republican Tate Reeves won re-election by around 4.5 points. Ivanka Trump testified yesterday in the civil fraud trial. And the Minnesota Supreme Court shoots down a lawsuit attempting to keep Trump off the ballot. A Michigan judge is set to hear a similar case today. And lastly, Eric Adams reportedly took money from members of a foundation started by Turkish President Erdogan's son. The paper trail grows. All this and more
Not Eric
on
Adams.
Today's program. I know. You know, he's just going really deep undercover in order to crack down on crime.
I mean,
By
he just
being a
seems-
criminal himself, potentially?
Just seems imminently sort of on the up and up.
Yes. You know, it's amazing how, like, he just kind of tripped into a vacuum left by the progressives in New York City who couldn't get their crap together and were way more focused on Andrew Yang, who ended up not, you know, being the person to focus on. It was Eric Adams, and they couldn't coalesce behind Maya Wiley in time. It was just a total mess. So, hopefully somebody else will be mayor sometime soon. We will be monitoring that. But thank you to everyone who tuned into our quite chaotic debate coverage last night. We all had some fun drinks. We had a good time, honestly.
There's
Good to let
a pizza
loose.
plate on the air purifier, it looks like.
Oh, there is. Yeah. Oh, that's Sam's.
Yep.
That's Sam's.
Even Sam, who stayed up here a little bit
later.
after
Yeah. I
everyone
thought he was, you know, going to
maybe
make.
spending the night.
Yeah, I thought he might crash on the couch, honestly, but no, he did make it home. So anybody who wants some fun, some laughter, you can check that out. It's on playback on demand on our channel. But yesterday, Bradley tells me that you guys didn't have time to play this. I just think we should, because this is a historic speech by Representative Rashida Tlaib, who was one of only 26 members in the history of the United States to be censured. I believe that's the number. A very small amount of representatives. And for it to be over this, for it to be over her advocacy for the Palestinian people in the midst of what genocide and international legal scholars are calling a genocide, for her to stand up for her literal countrymen. Well, I mean, no, I shouldn't say that. She's born in the United States, but she has a grandmother who is Palestinian. And in the speech, you'll see her show a photo of her grandmother. You'll see the folks sitting behind her. Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley, Summer Lee, Jamal Bowman also got up and spoke on Rashida Tlaib's behalf. But I think it's notable that the loudest voices calling for a ceasefire in this country, in Congress, are people of color. Do we have that photo of the of the Ceasefire Now group of folks here? I mean, there has been historic solidarity between Black activists in this country, leftist activists in this country, and the Palestinian people and Palestinian liberation. And I just want to ask liberals who are still not sold on this, why don't you want to listen to Black and brown voices on this? Why do you dismiss the fact that Black and brown voices in this country feel connected to the Palestinian plight? Here you can see here Ilhan Omar, Greg Kessar, Summer Lee, AOC, Jamal Bowman, Rashida Tlaib, Barbara Lee, Cori Bush, and more. That's the group of folks that are calling for a ceasefire. It's just,
I believe Maxwell Frost also is not pictured. There's a few others that aren't pictured in that also did, which also not white.
It's that is key, I think, to understanding what Palestinians experience, right? And
it's what Barnaby Rain said about how when he was going around campaigning for Jeremy Corbyn, he saw a guy, he talked to a sort of a right-wing guy who said Jeremy Corbyn likes immigrants and he is also anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And what that guy has taken this to mean is that Israel represents white people against the rest of the third world horde, basically.
That's a great example of this. Anti-Semitism is a massive, real plight and problem. I mean, there have been like the synagogue shooting, for example, in Pittsburgh is an example of how that has not gone away and still needs to be ripped out root and stem. But the cynical deployment of anti-Semitism to shut down Black and brown voices with their experiences of bearing the brunt of settler colonialism, or of state power, or of ethnostates, or of the might of America and the West, like or of imperialism, or of ethno-nationalism. That is why you are seeing this kind of growing solidarity. And I hope that's becoming clear to liberals who might not have understood that before. But without further ado, this is Rashida Tlaib speaking about her continued advocacy on behalf of the Palestinians.
I'm the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, Mr. Chair, and my perspective is needed here now more than ever. I will not be silenced, and I will not let you distort my words. Folks forget I'm from the city of Detroit, the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, where I learned to speak truth to power even if my voice shakes. Trying to bully or censor me won't work, because this movement for a ceasefire is much bigger than one person. It's growing every single day. There are millions of people across our country who oppose Netanyahu's extremism and are done watching our government support collective punishment and the use of white phosphorus bombs that melt flesh to the bone. They are done watching our government, Mr. Chair, supporting cutting off food, water, electricity, and medical care to millions of people with nowhere to go. Like me, Mr. Chair, they don't believe the answer to war crimes is more war crimes. The refusal of Congress and the administration to acknowledge Palestinian lives is chipping away at my soul. Over 10,000 Palestinians have been killed. Majority were children. But let me be clear. My criticism has always been of the Israeli government and Netanyahu's actions. It is important to separate people and governments, Mr. Chair. No government is beyond criticism. The idea that criticizing the government of Israel is anti-Semitic sets a very dangerous precedent, and it's being used to silence diverse voices speaking up for human rights across our nation. Do you realize what it's like, Mr. Chair, for the people outside the chamber right now, listening in agony to their own government dehumanizing them? To hear the President of the United States, we helped elect, dispute death tolls as we see video after video of dead children and parents under rubble. Mr. Chair, do you know what it's like to fear rising hate crimes, to know how Islamophobia and anti-Semitism makes us all less safe, and worry that your own child might suffer the horrors that 6-year-old Wadia did in Illinois? I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. We cannot lose our shared humanity, Mr. Chair. I hear the voices of advocates in Israel, in Palestine, across America, and around the world for peace. I am inspired by the courageous survivors in Israel who have lost loved ones, yet are calling for a ceasefire and the end to violence. I am grateful to the people in the streets for the peace movement, with countless Jewish Americans across the country standing up and lovingly saying, "Not in our name." We will continue to call for a ceasefire, Mr. Chair, for the immediate delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza, for the release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained, and for every American to come home. We will continue to work for a real lasting peace that upholds human rights and dignity of all people and centers in peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and censures no one, and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear of violence. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censor me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the president to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings. Thank you, and I yield.
I think like that image of Ilhan Omar standing by her side and holding her, and in her hand, putting her hand on her shoulder, is going to be a historic image of the bravery of these few dozen members of Congress calling for a ceasefire. This is just something that Jeff Shirky, I just sent this Bradley in our chat, who's a labor historian who we've had on this program before, does some writing for In These Times, dug up, just to see how far back this solidarity of non-white folks in this country goes with many of the Palestinian causes. This is some photos that Jeff uncovered here when Arab auto workers in Detroit did a wildcat strike in 1973 to demand that the UAW dispose of its State of Israel bonds. Rashida Tlaib's father was an auto worker at that time during the 70s. There are 22 Democrats who allowed this completely unconscionable censure to happen, and I'm going to read their names here. Steve Cohen of Tennessee, Jim Costa of California, Angie Craig of Minnesota, Donald Davis of North Carolina, Louis Frankel of Florida, Jared Golden of Maine, Dan Goldman of New York, my representative, who I look forward to supporting or opposing in the primary and supporting a progressive primary challenger. Shameful, one of the most blue districts in the entire country. Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, no surprise.
A racist.
Yep, a racist. All of these folks are racist.
Zionists are racist.
Yep.
I mean, that's where we're at right now.
Greg Landsman of Ohio, Susie Lee of Nevada, Kathy Manning of North Carolina, Jared Moskowitz of Florida, Wiley Nickel of North Carolina, Chris Pappas of New Hampshire, Mary Glusenkamp Perez of Washington, Pat Ryan of New York, Brad Schneider of Illinois, Kim Schreier of Washington, Darren Soto of Florida, Richie Torres of New York, Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida, and Frederica Wilson, also of Florida. And there were also 4 Republicans in the end who broke rank and opposed censuring Tlaib. But I've spoken to Rashida Tlaib a few times. I interviewed her in Detroit at a Bernie Sanders event, and I was struck by how I would say shy, humble, not interested she is in the spotlight off camera. But when you talk to her about issues of justice and human dignity, her fire comes through, and it's as authentic as I've ever seen from a politician. She's an activist in the best sense of the word, and an advocate in the best sense of the word as a representative, and she deserves our full-throated, unencumbered, unambiguous support right now.
Unapologetic.
Unapologetic's the best word, you're right. So it's a small comfort because I know she's in immense agony seeing the death of a child every 10 minutes in Gaza, the displacement of 1.5 million people, the minimum 10,500 deaths that we're seeing. And it's even been admitted that this is an undercount at this point. So but the small comfort is that I know for a fact that she will be remembered in history as a hero by people that really know what's going on.
No, the censure is an honor, and the people that censure her have blood on their hands. It's disgusting. I mean, we could, maybe we'll play this after, but we got on Democracy Now! A Holocaust survivor, basically saying shame on all those people, and she's absolutely right.
Yes, Marianne Ingram, who I believe we highlighted before, a peace activist. So thank you to everybody who stands with her, and don't be silent. Don't be silent. All right, folks, quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Alex Kane. we are back, and we are joined now by Alex Kane, senior reporter for Jewish Currents, who wrote the piece that we'll be talking about today, A McCarthyite Backlash Against Pro-Palestine Speech. Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So, your headline, as I just read, describes this suppression of pro-Palestine voices, specifically on college campuses, but in other contexts that we can get into as well, as a, quote, McCarthyite backlash. That was a quote from somebody you spoke to in your piece. Why do you think that that's an apt kind of comparison for what we're seeing here?
Well, the McCarthy era was, characterized by threats to people's employment and basically an attempt to sort of stigmatize people for being leftists, socialists, or suspected, communists. And that's exactly, in many ways, what we're seeing right now. Although I think the political contours of that are sort of different in the sense that there is probably more widespread support within broader American society for these ideas of Palestinian rights than there were in the 1950s. Of course, I was not living in the 1950s, but just from what I know, I think the stigma was perhaps more pronounced. I think today there's just more of a divide. But that said, the sort of the specter of McCarthyism is this idea that when you speak out for Palestinian rights, you will be punished, surveilled, doxxed, and in general stigmatized for that. We are what we're seeing right now, is basically students being put on, their names being put on trucks that go to campuses.
At Harvard, a right-wing group literally funded a truck with their names on it to park outside the campus so that everybody could see.
And at Columbia University as well, that also happened in recent weeks. That same group threatened. I'm not totally sure if it actually happened, but they, at the very least, they threatened to send those same trucks to people's individual homes, to what they say is, let the neighbors know that they're living next to anti-Semitic, terror supporters. This is basically taking a political disagreement and trying to use the political disagreement to banish people from mainstream society. That's what's going on. You're
and also intimidating people from speaking out. I mean, I think, it's quite likely that we could have seen a more rapid increase in public sentiment in support of Palestinians if there hadn't been this incredible chilling effect on the kind of speech that you describe. And I know personally from conversations I've had with people that they're afraid to speak out in support of those in Gaza and calling for a ceasefire or speaking plainly about this because they are worried about what their employer might say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples of people getting fired from their jobs for posts that they made on social media in support of Palestinian rights. We don't really know the full scope of it because a lot of it is not public. Palestine Legal, which was one of my main sources for this story, says that they've never seen anything like this. They're just getting a surge in requests for legal help. I think in terms of private employers, there's really not much they can do. Private employers can fire anybody for whatever they want. Of course, it gets into First Amendment territory when we're talking about public universities and sort of public agencies where employees are protected by the First Amendment. That's really what we're seeing. So it does, as you sort of noted, it spans. I mean, campuses are the center of this for obvious reason, given that campuses are sort of like where the the most visible Palestine solidarity organizing is going on right now. Sit-ins, protests, rallies, all of that is taking place on college campuses every day. But the sort of battle over the narrative is taking place elsewhere as well at people's job sites.
Yeah, I mean, you cite this in your piece, but Davis Polk, which is a prominent law firm, has rescinded job offers from students from Ivy League schools because of their names being added to letters in support of the Palestinian people. I mean, the Ivy League element of this and the elite institution part is something I'd love if we could flesh out here, because it seems to be that's where a lot of this is centered, right? Like the most powerful folks financially and with political influence, having gone in many ways to these elite universities like Yale, Harvard, Columbia, what have you, are using their financial power in order to intimidate these institutions into silencing their own student body.
Yes, I mean, we see that most prominently at Penn, at the University of Pennsylvania. And it's actually, let me say two things. I'll get into the University of Pennsylvania example because I think it's very telling. But just to say that, I mean, I think if it's not obvious, like the reason why people are focused on the Ivy League schools is obviously because of their like sort of prominent status in American culture, and as they are like pipelines for like the most, important and prestigious jobs in U.S. life, from law firms to tech companies to you name it, right? And so people are focusing on these Ivy League schools because they basically want to police the sentiment of young people and show them that if you don't get on the support Israel, if you don't get in line with that, you will face consequences for your employment. Obviously there's many members of Congress and many people in government that come from those Ivy League schools, and the sort of Israel advocacy apparatus is very scared that they are losing young people. I mean, they have lost young people.
Certainly.
Young. I mean, you look at the polling; it's very clear that they've lost young people, and for good reason. Because, I mean, there's many political sort of factors in here, but just the fact is that young Democrats are looking at what Israel does, and they are horrified for good reason. At the University of Pennsylvania, this actually started before October 7th. In September, there was a festival called the Palestine Rights Festival, and it was like a large gathering celebrating Palestinian culture. They also had figures such as Roger Waters and Mark Lamont Hill that Israel advocacy organizations said were anti-Semitic, and they pressured UPenn to shut it down. UPenn did not shut it down, although they did scrutinize the festival a lot. So there's this sort of interplay going on between Israel advocacy organizations wanting to censor and the university administrators giving them the time of day, but ultimately, at least on UPenn's part, not shutting it down. I mean, some people I talked to said that, well, they couldn't really shut it down because they would be facing, lawsuits and sort of breach of contract and all of this stuff. But then after October 7th, a lot of donors to UPenn started using that festival and the aftermath and sort of public climate in the United States to basically say, we're going to pull out our money. We're no longer going to donate to you as long as pro-Palestinian sentiment exists on campus, basically. And that's their message.
Yeah. And what's also another interesting, I mean, to bring it back to the debate from last night, Ron DeSantis was bragging about how he, in his capacity as governor, is cracking down on schools that have pro-Palestinian groups there. I think we talked about this on our show as well. And saying we're going to cut off funding because these pro-Palestinian groups are providing material support to Hamas. Alleging that these student groups, probably 10 people in a frickin' drum circle or whatever, are funneling money for terrorism. It's absolutely unhinged.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a second piece right now, specifically around material support for terrorism and how that's being utilized right now. What Governor DeSantis has done in Florida, which is certainly going to be legally challenged, in the coming weeks. But what he has done is basically claimed, without any evidence, they didn't even think their evidence is, there's no evidence. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll explain what it is. I mean, but he's directed public universities in Florida that have Students for Justice in Palestine chapters to be disbanded because they are in violation of material support to terrorism laws. Now, it's ludicrous on a lot of levels. One is that material support to terrorism is a crime. You go to jail for that. And if it was actually, if students were actually violating that law, they would be prosecuted. But there's no prosecution. This is just a brazen act of political intimidation to target, and of course to try to prop up his failing presidential campaign, but it's also just on itself, it's an authoritarian act to shut down these student organizers. And the Supreme Court has already ruled that independent political speech, even if it's in favor of a foreign terrorist organization, is free speech. As long as you're not doing anything at the coordination or advocacy, in coordination with a designated foreign terrorist organization, you can say you are pro-Hamas. That is not illegal in the United States.
Yeah, well, right, exactly. Except it's not illegal, but it doesn't prevent, I guess, some executive, like a governor acting in an executive role, essentially, from doing this in order to chill it, right? I mean,
Yes.
maybe the ACLU or a lawsuit's going to get involved here, but the point is that he got his headline.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, I don't want to downplay the consequences. The consequences are students are going to probably think twice. Do they really want to join an organization, even if they believe in it, if they get risk, if the risk is being tagged as a terrorist, which is obviously a deeply stigmatizing label still in the United States.
Absolutely. Can you talk a bit more about that element, the branding of students as terrorists, specifically the fact that a lot of student activists who are in favor of Palestinian rights, many of them are people of color, and it brings up these kinds of, I think, this obvious example of what the efforts to tamp down on dissent are really about, and how deeply racist the label is of terrorist sympathizer or terrorist, kind of just being applied once again, as it had been during the war on terror, which Biden had been attempting to kind of ramp down, and now we're back, I feel like, in many ways to square one. But just the racial element here of who's being targeted.
Yeah. I mean, totally. I mean, it's overwhelmingly people of color that are being targeted, and it's not only people of color. I mean, there are Jews that organize with students, white Jews, I should say. Not all Jews are white, but in the United States, the majority are. White Jews. There's plenty of white Jews that are organizing with Students for Justice in Palestine. There's plenty of white people that aren't Jewish organizing with Students for Justice in Palestine. But I would venture to guess that many people, if probably the majority, I mean, there's no stats out there, are, in SJP chapters are people of color. And when they get, the sort of, because of the sort of, I mean, the term terrorism is no longer a neutral term to describe, political, non-state political violence, right? It's turned into this racialized term that indiscriminately targets Muslims, Arabs, and other people of color. And if you tag them as terrorists, that opens up all sorts of consequences, which, surveillance, investigations, into whether they're here, whether they're, whether the immigration status is in line with U.S. law. So, I mean, that's another danger of these kinds of accusations. It's like, even if the material support for terrorism can't be proved, once you turn the state onto these individuals, they can find something that could be used to prosecute you, which has been done in the past. But, I mean, another thing to say is, like, there is there's no monolithic, person of color like opinion on Israel-Palestine, but many people of color, particularly those in young people of color in the Democratic Party, view Israel-Palestine through a lens of through a racial lens. Basically, they see one group of people, Israeli Jews, dominating another group of people, Palestinians, and they say, "Whoa, I recognize this in the United States because my life has been impacted by white supremacist structures in the United States." And so they have a sort of recognition of that. That's why you see in Congress every single member of Congress who signed on to Cori Bush's ceasefire resolution is a person of color.
Yep, we were just talking about that exactly. Right. I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
And I mean, the last thing I'll say is this gets into complicated territory, but the Students for Justice in Palestine, National Students for Justice in Palestine, their statements celebrate resistance, including armed resistance, what they call armed resistance to Israeli apartheid. And that is deeply uncomfortable to some people because what October 7th was a massacre of Israeli civilians in addition to the killing of Israeli soldiers. So this gets into all complicated territory of what is legitimate armed resistance to Israeli apartheid, right. What is and so the students obviously they don't view Hamas as a terrorist organization, no matter what the United States government says. They view it as part of a Palestinian resistance movement, and that's what their statements have reflected. Now it's totally out of step with what the majority of Americans think, but they have a right to say that, and they should not be labeled as potential criminals for their speech.
Absolutely. Lastly, before we let you go, Alex, you did also write about how there are a ton of harassment incidents happening on a lot of these campuses, racial harassments targeting people wearing hijabs and things like that who might be outspoken. What were some of those stories that you uncovered in your reporting?
Yeah, well, there was one at Amherst, UMass Amherst. Let me pull it up on my screen so I get all the facts right. The co-president of the school's SJP chapter, the SJP had posted on Instagram, a bunch of rallies that they were hosting in response to Israel's bombing campaign in Gaza, and one of their Instagram posts defended Palestinians' right to resist Israeli violence, and they got just deep Islamophobic death threats and just very violent and vile racial slurs and death threats. And as a result, the co-president of the SJP chapter at UMass Amherst didn't want to go to school, couldn't go to school because she feared for her safety. At Columbia, students told me that they've seen Muslim women's hijabs being ripped off, people's kufiyas, the sort of scarf that many Palestinians wear as a national symbol, being ripped off, and also getting death threats. So it sort of brings it back to the previous question that you had about the sort of racial nature of these. I mean, a lot of targeting of Muslims and Arabs as sympathizers, terrorist sympathizers that have no, that shouldn't belong in polite society. As a result, we're seeing violent threats being directed at them that make some of them fear for their lives. In fact, at Columbia, the Columbia University radio station sent reporters to these dueling pro-Israel, pro-Palestinian rallies one day, and they interviewed someone who was a Columbia University administrative employee, and the guy said on tape, "I wish they all die," talking about the pro-Palestinian students. That's just an example of the climate that a lot of these students are experiencing, and they're quite scared. Of course, there's also a parallel of Jewish students feeling afraid,
yes.
And some real anti-Semitic incidents, but also some exaggerated incidents in which people are conflating support for Palestinians with an anti-Semitic threat.
Well, Alex, really appreciate your reporting on this. We'll be on the lookout for your piece about Florida. Jewish Currents magazine. Alex is a senior reporter over there. The piece is called A McCarthyite Backlash Against Pro-Palestine Speech, and you've written a bunch since that even came out. So everyone check out Jewish Currents. We had Noah Coleman on a few weeks ago, also over there at Jewish Currents magazine. You guys are doing amazing work, so thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Emma.
All right, folks, quick break. And when we come back, we are going to be speaking to Shah Meer Baloch, who is covering Afghan refugees within Pakistan for The Guardian. We are back, and we are joined now by Shah Meer Baloch. Apologies for mispronouncing it earlier. Reporter covering Pakistan for The Guardian, who has written multiple pieces on the Afghan refugees within Pakistan. Shah Meer, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. You're welcome. Pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you for having me over here.
Yes. So we're, for the audience, we have a little bit of a delay because Shah Meer is in Islamabad, but and has been on the ground covering and interviewing refugees and speaking to many people there. But for our audience, earlier in October, the Pakistan government announced that it had a deadline for undocumented Afghan refugees to leave the country. Now that deadline has passed. That was on Wednesday. What is the background here? Why did the Pakistani government impose this deadline? Shah Meer, can you hear me?
I think if we see, I think yesterday, yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry, we just had a little bit of a hiccup there. Let's see if we can get this to catch back up. Oh, there we go. All right, now we're live.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Sorry, Shah Meer.
Okay. You know, we might need to take a quick break,
and we're
going to try to
maybe,
reconnect. Be right back.
All right.
We are back, and we are joined now by Shah Meer Baloch, reporter covering Pakistan for The Guardian. He's written multiple pieces on Afghan refugees within Pakistan. We had a bit of connectivity issues. Hopefully we got that sorted out. Shah Meer, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you actually for having me over.
Of course. So earlier in October, the Pakistan government announced a deadline for undocumented Afghan refugees to leave Pakistan. The deadline passed on Wednesday. What is the background of that deadline, and why did the Pakistani government impose it?
Actually, the background it's quite clear, which was reiterated by the caretaker Prime Minister Anwar al-Kakadi yesterday, which he sees that time and again they had requested the Afghan Taliban to help them and not to provide any sanctuary to the Pakistani Taliban, who have been carrying out attacks inside Pakistan. According to him, more than 15 suicide bombers recently were detonated themselves across the country, and many of the attacks they've been carrying out in Pakistan, they have their safe sanctuaries according to Pakistan and Afghanistan. Though when Taliban came into power, there were celebrations in Pakistan like Taliban would be very helpful to them, and they thought there would be a decrease in terrorism in Pakistan. But according to the caretaker Prime Minister, which he said yesterday, there has been rise in terrorism in Pakistan 500%, and around 3,000 people have lost their lives in Pakistan in last 2 years since Taliban came into power. So it's been a pressure tactic to force Taliban, to pressure Taliban to stop and giving any safe sanctuary and support to the Pakistani Taliban who have their bases inside Afghanistan.
But the thousands of refugees that are in Pakistan, I mean, they fled the Taliban, right? So the question is are these refugees here bearing the brunt and being expelled with no real plan because of kind of domestic nationalist Pakistan political considerations?
Yeah, I think you're right, and it was such a rash decision. 2 years ago, when Taliban were coming into power in August, I was reporting on one of the borders in Chaman, bordering Ispan Boldak, near to Kandahar province. I personally saw hundreds and thousands of Afghans fleeing the Taliban regime, and there were minorities like Hazara Shias, there were children, women, musicians, activists, journalists who came and had refuge in Pakistan. And this decision has been taken to expel them, like they're refugees. They're the ones that have been facing the brunt of the Taliban. But at the same time, I think we need to see it a bit in historical context. Since the invasion of Soviet Union, former Soviet Union like Russia, of Afghan Taliban, like Afghan Talibans were supported by the US and Pakistani authorities, and it was the movement at first in 1980s refugees had come to Pakistan, and there are those refugees as well who have been living in Pakistan. I personally interviewed many people who were born in Pakistan, and they're in this brunt and this crackdown, and they're facing the worst brunt of it.
How many refugees are in Pakistan? How many Afghan refugees?
According to the government of Pakistan, there are at least 2 million registered refugees are in Pakistan, but around 1.5 to 1.7 million are unregistered refugees. So, according to the Pakistan, the government says that they are not expelling and they are not forcing registered refugees who are registered with UNHCR and the Pakistani government to go and leave the country. According to authorities in Pakistan, they are just expelling that are the refugees who don't have any restriction in Pakistan, and they are the ones they fear. Not all, a few of them, couple of them might be used again in terrorist activities. So that's the entire point. Like they, according to the state, they are Pakistani state. They are explaining the. But at the same time, we have talked to many people. Like there are those who are being expelled from Pakistan. They are the ones. They also have proof of registration cards with the UNHCR, with Pakistani state. So in this severe crackdown, there are also the ones where the proof of registration they are being expelled.
And I mean, what is the evidence that's being provided here for who should be expelled and who should not be? You wrote about how there's been police harassment of both legal and non-legal refugees, and how, this is in many ways stripping people or taking people away from the only home that they've known for quite a while.
Yeah, it's actually, according to police, they are arresting those. They don't have any proof of registration, like they don't have any cards. Like whosoever they're registered with the UNHCR or the Pakistani government, they have a card to show as a proof. But I personally had interviewed many people in Quetta, a bordering region with Afghanistan. When they started the crackdown, many Uzbeks or Afghans they were arrested during this severe crackdown. They had the cards and they were facing the police wrath. So there's also a time when there are already the questions have been raised and the fingers have been raised over police performance. Like it's such a time like many fear the police takes bribes from such people, such vulnerable refugees as well. Police have been accused. So, according to the officials and the government ministers, they're just explaining and they're just going against those who are not in a position to provide any proof of registration that they are registered refugees.
I mean, what about the United States' role here in resettling Afghan refugees? The Biden administration had promised that they would do that for some fraction of refugees, but many people, as you say, are fleeing the Taliban, women, folks that don't want to live under the rule of a religious fundamentalist government. Where is the U.S. in all of this?
I think it's been more than 2 years now since the fall of Kabul. Since the Taliban took over power. So according to the US officials, they have a list of 25,000 people they need to resettle and relocate in the US. But it's been so slow, maybe because of the bureaucracy or other reasons. The US has not been US has not been very much active in taking out and Afghan refugees who have been in Pakistan in this July. So far they've just relocated. I think we have not been given a particular number. I think they've not relocated more than hundreds of people. Still, they have some 25,000 people around in Pakistan, which they need to be relocated and they need to be settled. So it's we have been told by the government ministers in Pakistan, top officials, like they are giving a specific deadline to refugees when they want, wherever they want to settle them. They have a deadline till 31st December, which it's what we have heard from the government ministers. So till 31st December, I think the US authorities have 25,000 Afghan refugees to be relocated in the US. And so far, it's been very much slow because the entire drive is started, relocation is started in this July.
Well, Shah Meer Baloch, a reporter covering Pakistan for The Guardian, you can read his work over at The Guardian. We'll put a link to it below. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks to Shah Meer. I know we had some connectivity issues, but we were able to still have a conversation, so I'm happy
I mean, a
about
video
that.
call between Brooklyn and Islamabad is pretty
Tough,
yeah.
but appreciate the efforts regardless. And we'll be
it's 11 p.m. there.
We'll be monitoring that story very closely. So we're going to wrap up the first hour of this program and head into the fun half. The number is 646-257-3920. We will be taking your calls and reading your IMs. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning. We had Tiare Gattimora talking about feminism and the Italian left and different sort of the parliamentary splinters that are going on in not Italy, actually Spain. She's a Spanish-Italian journalist. We're talking about Spain. And also this weekend we're going to be talking more about the Communist Manifesto for Patreon members. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning to hear David and I talk about it. Do our third installment on the Communist Manifesto.
And on ESPN today, Bradley and I will be giving our picks against the spread. I'm starting to gain a little bit of a lead. We'll see if I'll be able to hold that. And you should check out our Monday episode where we had a ton of fun dancing on Josh McDaniels' grave, talking about CJ Stroud, me bragging about that call of mine in the draft, and more. YouTube.com/ESPN show. We have Binder here, I believe. So let's let him in. Oh, Brandon is sick today. Okay. So it's just Binder today. And here he is, Matt Binder, here to tell us all about what's happening on Doomed and Scam Economy.
Hello, how are you?
I am okay. I'm starting. Some numbness is starting to set in. Okay. Yeah. No. You didn't need to hear my whole life story.
No. I do. I feel you. It's been this way. I feel like I come on every week now, and we talk the same discussion about how terrible things are right now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this week, Scam Economy's back, baby. Scam Economy had finally its return episode with the wonderful Molly White of Web3 is Going Great. And we discussed the Sam Bankman-Fried FTX fraud trial. It's already the second biggest download day in Scam Economy's nearly 2-year history. So people are clearly loving the episode. Molly was there for part of the trial. So it was very interesting to hear. And she covered the daily goings on at what was happening at that trial as well. Every day she had a new dispatch about what had happened. So it's definitely a very interesting episode. Check it out at scameconomy.com, where all the podcast links can be found. And then if you want to watch the video, you can find that at youtube.com/Matt Binder.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys, heading into the fun half. The number is 646-257-3920. See you there.
You are in for it. All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. hell of a lot of bank, okay? I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Back.
We are back. I'm turning off the voice, off the voicemail. And you guys can call in now, 646-257-3920. We'll read some IMs before we get into some clips here. Number 13. This is outside the scope of this debate, but I'm starting to think Biden might begin to experience a potentially fatal amount of stress from recent developments. The GOP House just started sending bullcrap subpoenas to his family today. And along with the insane geopolitical situation and his heavy domestic unpopularity, this seems just too much for someone his age. He might have to drop out or simply due to medical reasons or be similar to RBG or Feinstein.
I mean, it's a race against time for both him and Trump at this point.
I just don't think that's going to happen. I think.
Yeah, I don't think they care about these sort of things.
Been running
like,
for president for 40 years.
I don't think he's stressing out about any of this. Like, they just don't. They don't pay attention to this type of stuff. Like, it's just they're used to it. There's no way you're a politician for this long and actually care about anything like this. Which is good and bad. There's certain things you shouldn't care about. You should have a strong skin, a thick skin for certain attacks. But then there's also issues where you should actually show empathy and care about what's going on. And I think to the good ones and the bad ones, Biden has shown that he has that talent to not care.
Yep. Devoid Reality says, why doesn't anyone in the media correlate Menachem Begin? Begin, right. Yeah, sorry. I didn't even remember that was his first name. Sixth Prime Minister of Israel or his Irgun fellow members that were considered terrorists in Palestine by Britain in 1944 before the formation of the State of Israel when they controlled Palestine. The founder of the Likud party.
I mean, the truth is, like, there's this idea that you can pick a non-terrorist side on this. And the truth is, like, we could enforce a Truth and Reconciliation Committee on the Palestinians and look into terrorism, but the Israelis would not want that to be a looking into both sides, because the reality would take away a major point of like why they can't have diplomatic relations with Palestinians is because they say it's terrorism. But look at the history.
Yep. Daredevil, doubtful, but do you think any liberals heard the Republican rhetoric for Palestinian genocide at last night's debate and question why their stance is the same as the far right? I hope so.
It was disgusting.
War on Santa said, congrats to Tracy Chapman, whose song Fast Car was just named Country Music Song of the Year 35 years after its original release. You know what's not Country Music Song of the Year? Jason Aldean's anti-protest song, Try That in a Small Town.
Well, I imagine this is the Tyler Childers cover of...
No, seriously, Fast Car addresses issues, race, poverty, healthcare abuse, and the longing for a better life that remain relevant and unaddressed to this day. If you want to know what this the Still People Need listen to Fast Car. I love Fast Car, and I love Tracy Chapman.
Is that charting though now, or is it their cover?
It charted. It had like this big resurgence
because of the cover.
I think people started to hear the song. I'm not exactly sure.
It must be because of the cover. Like, there's no way. I mean, look, I love that song too. I've always liked it, but there's no way it just randomly.
Sorry, it wasn't Tyler Church. Luke Combs. Luke Combs' cover climbed to #1 on the Billboard's Hot Country Songs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably because of the cover, but still, her version is what.
Yeah, they're trying to basically kind of go back in time and recognize her because she's a black artist. Because shockingly, country music is a bit Johnny-come-lately to the issue of racial equality. But I mean, Tracy Chapman.
I mean, my North Dakota ass was surprised because I've heard that song for a while, and I'm like, oh, Tracy Chapman's a black woman. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Matt Leck clearly wants to give the credit to a white man for a black woman's song.
I'm all about that.
It's because of him. It's obviously that these sort of things happen when a current big artist covers a song. The original gains attention as well, and in this case, it seems like it gained more attention than the cover, which is good.
Yeah. Golden Oyster Cult. Seeing Rashida Tlaib's speech, I'm even more angry and disgusted by David Pakman, who in a recent podcast said that it was giving the benefit of the doubt to Rashida Tlaib was stupid rather than genocidal in her defense of the phrase "from the river to the sea."
I hope that's a mischaracterization because that's outrageous.
I'm sorry that I ever gave Pakman my money in the past subscription. I mean, I hope that's a mischaracterization, but Golden Oyster Cult, you're a frequent IMer, so I trust your characterization. If that is the case, I vehemently disagree with that. It is a chant that is, if you ever have been to a pro-Palestine demonstration like myself, that is frequently chanted. It is a call for liberation that, yes, was adopted by Hamas, but the context of regular people chanting "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" is not the one that is applied to Hamas. And we've gone over this time and time again.
Pakman should have... Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, this is like the one issue that has like decades long standing in the activity and activism around this. Like, I remember being in junior high, really getting into like politics in general and leftist politics. And like, I recall this chant at pro-Palestine rallies and marches and events. Like, this has been around for decades. And this is the first time I've ever heard any major pushback like this before. I've heard previously people say they have a problem with that chant, but I've never in my lifetime of the decades seeing pro-Palestine rallies and events, I have never seen this blowback to the chant, let alone the outright labeling it of hate speech and anti-Semitism.
But we know why.
It's just they're losing the propaganda.
We know why. It's because the conflation between Israel and Jewish people is breaking in front of people's eyes, because actually a lot of the people opposing Israel are Jews in America.
Yep.
And I mean, and like the idea that this is anti-Semitism, like I've been led by Jewish writers and thinkers to this, like Tony Judt in the New York Review of Books in 2003, saying like, yeah, actually they're going the way of an ethno-nationalism that is anachronistic.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, like I again, like I'm not going to take that characterization of what Pakman said at face value. I'll hold out hope that wasn't real, but I do think Pakman's been avoidant on this issue, and he should have a post-Zionist, somebody like, I don't know, Colwyn, or even somebody like Ilan Pappy or Avi Shlaim to actually like show his audience the lay of the land in this, because they're just being left behind. Because what I've seen is, and this was when he had that co-host, I can't remember what his name is, but they're talking about the word apartheid and saying, yeah, nobody using that phrase know what words means.
Yeah.
And I just think like you're straw manning this as if it's just like, for some reason there's a whole bunch of anti-Semitic college freshmen that just hate Jews for some reason and are projecting it onto Israel. That's not the case.
It's not. And I think, what's also notable is that, who thinks that from the river to the sea, they should have all the territory is the Israeli government. Netanyahu went and spoke at the United Nations with a map of Israel-Palestine. Let's look up that map, actually, if you don't mind. This was before the October 7th attacks. This was the map that Netanyahu displayed at the UN, and it was immensely inflammatory because it essentially erased Palestinian sovereignty. When
I mean, that's what they've always. That's what
displaying it.
Israel has never acknowledged that. Like,
yes,
it's always been this like, oh, we can't do it because it's terror. But that's just.
Yes, this is it. If you look at go to the second one, Common Dreams. He showed this map of, here we go, map of the Middle East without Palestine to the UN General Assembly. What day was this? When was this? So you'll see, if we could just zoom in. This was on September 22nd, okay? You know, we talk about things that are like the conditions that led us to the October 7th attack. It's the Abraham Accords, the choking off of like traditional Arab allies, no matter how threadbare they were for Palestinians in the region, that also contributed to the desperation, and things like this.
No, you hear words like eradication get thrown out by Zionists. They want to eradicate Palestine.
Yes,
and I'd like it if there was a open a form of Zionism that wasn't about that. It doesn't exist on this planet.
It doesn't anymore, and I think that people are beginning to understand that. So you can see here that the map he displayed doesn't even acknowledge the existence of Palestine. I would imagine that if, you know, people saw that, might be a little bit radicalized. I don't know.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole focus on language too is, well, for one, it takes away from what's actually going on right now. But also, if we're going to focus on language, why is it never go both ways? Like, there's literally U.S. State Department spokesperson. I mean, this happens every time. Whenever anything's asked about what's going on with the massive amounts of civilian casualties in Gaza, the first thing they do is they repeat the same slogan, the same phrase: Israel has a right to defend itself. At what point do we consider that slogan to be Islamophobic, anti-Arab, xenophobic, racist, pro the murder of innocents? We're hearing that slogan every time someone brings up, what about all these massive civilian deaths, these thousands of children, Palestinian children who've died in Gaza, and they just repeat this slogan. So if we want to talk about language, should we consider that as well to be off guards? Can't say that anymore. If anyone says that, that means they're racist and Islamophobic.
Yeah.
I mean, here's Bibi Netanyahu. I can't remember exactly. Maybe this is from 2022, but as translated Hebrew by Google, these are the basic lines of the national government headed by me. The Jewish people have an exclusive and unquestionable right to all areas of the land of Israel. The government will promote and develop settlement in all the parts of the land of Israel, including the Galilee, the Negev, the Golan, Judea, and Samaria. It's clear. There is no dispute about what this is. The eradication is coming from inside Israel. Like that, this is not when Palestinians say from the river to the sea, and not just Palestinians, but say like the leading Israeli historians, Avi Shlaim and Ilan Pappy, when they say from the river to the sea, they're not genocidal remotely. And it's disgusting that so many people have been saying that. What they're saying is that democracy is the way forward. And look, okay, you want to do the two-state solution? That is, as Avi Shlaim says, that is liberal ethno-nationalism. That is preferable to this fascist, exterminationist, right-wing nationalism that we are just allowing to take place in front of our face. But let me tell you this: the obstacle to a two-state solution is the same one as the obstacle to a one-state solution, which is Zionists want every single inch of that land, and they want the Palestinians off it.
Let's pull this clip up, or this tweet up that I sent. This is from a pro-Israel activist, right? This is they're admitting right here exactly what we're seeing. This is a photo of Israeli soldiers in Gaza. It says it right here. Photo: Israel is back in Gaza, and we are here to stay in our ancestral land and our ancient beaches. So this is just an example of like
eradication of Palestine.
Yes. Zionism is a religious, nationalist, and then by extension, expansionist ideology. And we, on the left, are against religious and ethnic nationalism. It's not that difficult to comprehend. Now, I mean, and not just because, like, oh, in principle, we just don't like this construction of a state. I mean,
look at the results.
But the results are clear, to Matt's point. It makes everybody less safe. Because when you're constantly worried about either expanding your territory or protecting the ethnic purity of your state, it's by definition exclusionary, and it results in things like the apartheid that we see. The fact that in Gaza, there and in different parts of the occupied territories in the West Bank, there are roads that Palestinians cannot drive on. The fact that 80% of people in Gaza are reliant on food aid. The fact that 90% of people in Gaza do not have clean water. I mean, the fact that life expectancy is much lower than it is in other areas because people die so young. It's the result of the fact that Palestinians don't have political rights. They don't have the ability to have a voice in their government in the only quote-unquote democracy in the Middle East. They are occupied. They are subjugated.
You have Jim Crow in the West Bank.
Second-class citizens. That's why you see people of color in this country have solidarity, and why the only freaking people who are calling for a ceasefire in the House right now are POC, is because they see this. They understand this. This is a part of the cultural history in the United States. So, like, I'm against Christian nationalism. I am against Zionism. I'm against Muslim fundamentalism. I'm against Hindu nationalism, as we've covered on this program. The left is against essentially this nationalist ideology, and the reality is that the reason that there's this fervor and that we're starting to undo so much of the brainwashing that's happened here in the West is because this ideology that is unfortunately so destructive, it was right in keeping with United States and Western imperial interests, and that's why it's so interlinked and difficult to rip apart at this point. It is not hatred of Jews. The reason that the reason that basically you're seeing such pushback here is because it threatens Western hegemony in that way.
Yeah, and an exclusive. Let's see if I can find that Tony Judd thing. I'm not sure if I can, but yeah, maybe we can just move on. I'll bring it up a little bit later.
I don't even know what I am we read that got us down that road, but I'll take it.
It was. I mean, no, but to your point, like it is wild to me how obvious, like the even just like looking at the Israeli government, it's like, how can any like liberal see this and like not understand this is exactly what they hate about Russia and Putin, about Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Like, this is, in my opinion, Netanyahu and his government's worse. I mean, frankly, they just are.
Yeah.
I mean, just look
at
look at the casualties. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's so I just don't understand what's not connecting here. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like we can obviously talk about whatever the peace process looks like or whatever, sure. But the fact that we can't even get past this point of this government's got to go, and what they're doing is wrong, is just
and supporters
mind blowing to me.
And liberal Zionists in the same freaking breath will say, Netanyahu's a tyrant. Netanyahu's horrible. Netanyahu's crazy. We want him out. And then be like, whoa, but obviously
Netanyahu,
the way that he's defending Israel is completely rational and justified.
He's a logical continuation of Israel. There's no
but which one is it, though? I mean, people really need to start to think more critically about this stuff. I mean, is Israel earnestly defending itself with Netanyahu at the helm if you think he's insane? How can you square those two thoughts?
Because it's what you said, what we've been talking about this entire day is extreme racism. Have that Pappy clip up, because this is why every time Avi Shlaim and Ilan Pappy say like, hey, I think actually we don't need to have segregation to get Muslims and Jews to live together. And in fact, actually this exclusive nationalist project that the Zionists have been doing with the help of Western powers is one of the causes of all of the strife. Actually, maybe the leading one. Avi Shlaim himself said that his family was very happy to live in Baghdad, and then they had to move because of Zionism and the us versus them idea that of course entrenched because it's right there in the policy. But this every time they have to say this stuff about like racism, because that is the fundamental objection here. It's what is happening now is justifiable because otherwise the Arabs would massacre Jews. Mm-hmm. And that is the government of Israel knows that is like their the best thing in their bag, and they go to it all the time. And so we need to be actually forthright about what this actually means. So go ahead, Bradley.
Surprised when I'm sort of listening to John Kerry, re-listening to John Kerry's last speech. If you remember, he was in a very dramatic voice. He explained to us that without a two-state solution, the only possible scenario is an apartheid Israel. And I wanted to say, hello, John. How are you? Looking up. The one-state apartheid is already there, so your warning is not about the future, you're actually describing the present. Secondly, couldn't you find one moment in your speech, maybe 2 sentences in your speech to say that actually having a democratic state for Jews and Palestinians between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean is not a doomsday scenario? Couldn't you just say, wouldn't it be wonderful to have settlers and natives living as equal citizens in the same state? Why do you have to describe this as a doomsday scenario? The only people in the world who would describe this as a doomsday scenario are Zionists. Because they think that when the Jews are not a majority, the only possible thing Palestinians can do is to kill them. Well, I lived in Haifa all my life. I live in the Galilee. I was in political outfits and academic outfits where the Jews were the minority and nothing bad happened to us. And the idea that Palestine cannot be a political outfit if the Palestinians are the majority and the Jews are a minority is a racist idea that should be challenged strongly.
Wow, when was that?
I can look that up actually.
Like at least 10 years ago, gotta be, right?
It's absolutely true though. Like you could just look
Simple.
at like literally whenever you see this. Okay, if you're listening to the show, do this exercise. When you're online and you see someone, not just like just a common pro-Israel supporter. I'm talking about those people. You see someone like rabidly supporting the Israeli government. Click their profile, scroll down, do a search in their history, look certain keywords up, look how they've referred to Arab people, Muslim people. Look if they even say the word Palestine or Palestinian.
Can they say Palestinian?
Yep. Because that's another thing. So many of these people who have a problem with the phrase from the river to the sea, they also have a previous history of saying, oh, there's no such thing as a Palestinian. You have to call them Gazans. Palestine doesn't exist.
Yep.
They're literally telling you that they don't view these people as Palestinians because they're saying Palestine does not exist. Palestinians don't exist.
One might use a word like
problem
eradication. Eradication. They're eradicating Palestine. These words, yeah.
And it's not just that. It's not just that. There was a story going around, and we've seen this throughout. Like, this is why this is always been an issue that touches me so strongly. There is no other issue I know of on the planet where an entire people, like at least in modern times, I don't want to in modern times, in the past couple of decades, where you mention something or they just show that they're there, they're visible. And there's a problem with that. And a great example was there was an article going around about how last year a hospital in London displayed some artwork by children in Gaza. Just art, and it wasn't anything political either. It was just the olive branches that symbolize Palestine and them wearing like the keffiyeh. Excuse me if I'm saying it wrong. The scarf, right. And things like that, just showing Palestinian culture. And the hospital took it down because there was a complaint from a UK lobby group who said that artwork was making Jewish patients feel uncomfortable. Just the visibility of Palestinian children saying, this is our culture, Here we are, nothing political. And they took it down. The hospital didn't even stand up and say there's nothing wrong with this artwork. Didn't even, as far as I saw, no Jewish people even complained because these articles were just strictly saying sourced from this UK political lawyer lobby group were saying this. It was just baffling to me.
The truth is,
racism.
In the context of Zionism, the existence of Palestinians is itself political.
Yeah.
Because this is like immediately you read any of these books, Ilham Pappy, whoever. a close eye on the demographics and who you need to expel and how many you need to expel and who you can allow to, because like let's say America's going to get upset if we start shelling Nazareth, for instance, like that. Like these sorts of considerations were fundamental to the foundation of this country.
Yep.
I found this. That was from 6 years ago, the Pappy clip. I found this from Tony Judt, who was a deceased now, but Jewish writer. Who was smeared by Israel, by Zionists as anti-Semitic for saying like this and things like this in 2003. In a world where nations and peoples increasingly intermingle and intermarry at will, where cultural and natural impediments to communication have all but collapsed, where more and more of us have multiple elective identities and would feel falsely constrained if we had to answer to just one of them, in such a world, Israel is truly an anachronism. And not just an anachronism, but a dysfunctional one. In today's clash of cultures between open, pluralistic democracies and belligerently intolerant, faith-driven ethno-states, Israel actually exists falling into the wrong camp. Continues. To convert Israel from a Jewish state to a binational one would not be easy, though not quite as impossible as it sounds. You'll hear some Twitch streamers and stuff like that talk shit about how this stuff is impossible. So in 2003, Judd is addressing those morons. To convert Israel from a Jewish state to a binational one would not be easy, though not quite as impossible as it sounds. The process has already begun de facto, but it would cause far less disruption to most Jews and Arabs than its religious and nationalist foes will claim. In any case, no one I know has a better idea. Anyone who genuinely supposes that the controversial electronic fence now being built will resolve matters has missed the last 50 years of history. The fence, actually an armored zone of ditches, fences, sensors, dirt roads for tracking footprints, and a wall up to 28 feet tall in places, occupies, divides, and steals Arab farmland. It will destroy villages, livelihoods, and whatever remains of the Arab Jewish community. It costs approximately $1 million per mile and will bring nothing but humiliation and discomfort to both sides. Like the Berlin Wall, it confirms the moral and institutional bankruptcy of the regime it is intended to protect.
I mean, what else can you say?
We can pick apart slogans instead of addressing that.
I just want, like, if you're called an anti-Semite, you can, I mean, look people straight in the eye, and you can say that you're the bigot.
Yep.
You're the bigot. Zionism is a bigoted ideology. Full stop. As is all religious and ethno-nationalism. All of it. And just because there's been a multi-decade-long propaganda campaign that has convinced people in this country that opposing it is akin to anti-Semitism, it doesn't mean that you should cower to that. We should all feel emboldened by this moment.
Yep.
And I certainly do.
I absolutely do. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that there's been a few moments like this. I mean, the early one, I remember before I was even working at Majority Report when Bibi Netanyahu did the whole come to address Congress over Obama's head thing. I think that was a pretty clarifying moment. But like, it's impossible to like learn about the world and also feel okay with the way Israel has developed. Unless you ignore like the actual reality of it.
Yep.
And you can call it, it's a democracy with LGBT people. Just with a little aside of Jim Crow and a side of Guernica every 5 years.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hopefully the bombs are rainbow colored when they drop them on Palestinian children. Freaks.
Also, it's not even entirely true that there's some like.
Well, it's just a way. It's like a way to say they're savages. Yeah. It's a way to say they're not Western. They're savages. They're
no, but I'm talking about. But I'm talking about even Israel is not like.
Right.
If you're a woman who wants to get a divorce in Israel, you need to get permission from your husband to get that divorce. You can't get a divorce on your own. Is that the liberal, feminist empowerment, democracy that we aspire to be, or we aspire to have around the world? Like, we have no problem calling out countries that are theocratic in the Muslim world. We have no problem doing that. We have no problem demonizing those countries, and even doing it to the point where we're so bloodthirsty we sound like we hate them based on even how they look and how they talk and the color of their skin more so than anything else. And that's what we're seeing right now. Of course, I've actually already experienced it myself, because people are under the notion, I guess, because how I look, that I'm Arab or Muslim, and people have already called me insanely racist things for something that I'm not even, but I don't call them out because the point isn't what I am. The point is you shouldn't be saying that about those people. And I have no problem just shutting my mouth and letting them think I'm that and standing with those people. But the idea that Israel because it's not Muslim, is allowed to basically run a theocratic state is absurd. We have no problem calling the far right in this country, the evangelical Christian right in this country who want to do away with abortion rights. We have no problem calling them the Christian Taliban and all these other things. Again, even that phrase is to demonize what we see over in the in the Middle East, right? The Christian Taliban, right? We have no problem, though, demonizing any sort of religious zealots in Christianity, any religious zealots in the Muslim world, but we can't apparently do that with zealots in Israel. It's just consider these things, people. Seriously, just think about what is the difference. There is none.
Yep. All right, let's do this Meghan McCain thing just to have like a bit more of a fun angle on this story. So,
speaking of attached to reality,
right? If you guys need any more evidence, I don't know, for family members or friends that you may be having debates with, that though the people that are supporting Israel in this genocidal project in Gaza are horrible racists themselves and generally horrible on other topics, just send them this. Meghan McCain here speaking about the pro-Palestine demonstrations in the DC area and how somehow Meghan McCain not feeling safe. No, it's okay, but like there's a lot of talk about how scary these pro-Palestine demonstrations are, but usually it's said about folks who are Jewish.
Yeah, just FYI, Meghan McCain is not Jewish.
No, is her husband? Yes. But her husband is. Okay.
Okay.
But this is what you're hearing, and these are the kinds of people who are making these arguments, which are really fundamentally racist because of the multi-ethnic nature, the vast diversity that is on display in these pro-Palestine demonstrations, and often the fact that there are Arab and Muslim people involved. So McCain's just really continuing her father's legacy here of being deeply racist against Muslim people.
Hostages of babies who have been taken hostage in Israel. I live right outside Washington, D.C. There was a huge protest here over the weekend. And in those protests, there were people putting flags and keffiyehs on statues of Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. There are bloody painted handprints on the side of the White House. It feels like a science fiction movie to me. And I tweeted that it feels kind of like The Handmaid's Tale, but instead of Christian
Well, it feels like science fiction to you. Can you flesh that out, Meghan McCain? Why do protests by human beings feel like an alien invasion?
I'm sorry. We're seeing images of like people, Arab citizens, or Palestinian citizens of Israel getting arrested for like scrolling and shit like that, and journalists getting their houses bombed. Up to like 39, I believe, were at journalists and their families bombed by a country that exports technology to spy on journalists. By the way. Like that is the movie going on right now that is horrible and science fiction type terror. That's actually happening right now. That protests are going on in opposition to it. Like that's The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, well, then there you go. There's the other kind of just racist assumption there, which is that
there's going to be rape happening.
There's going to be rape of women by the dirty Arabs who also don't like the LGBTQ community, who, Meghan McCain has been such a great advocate for in the past. And the Republican Party generally. Like, it's just all about they're scary, they're inhuman, they're almost like aliens. But when you actually get down to it, they're violent and they hate women and they're going to rape us.
Thomas Jefferson, there are bloody painted handprints on the side of the White House. It feels like a science fiction movie to me. And I tweeted that it feels kind of like The Handmaid's Tale, but instead of Christian extremism, it's Islamic extremism.
There you go.
I feel really unsafe. And I never feel like this. I am not one of these people that I lived in New York for a really long time. I lived in Los Angeles.
The most dangerous place on earth,
really handle
New
my
York.
shit. And all of a sudden, I took my kids to Chuck E. Cheese over the weekend. And when I came back, my husband was like, oh, how was it? And I was like, it was great. How are you? And he said, good. But then I was actually worried about if something was going to happen to you guys at Chuck E. Cheese, which he's not like that either. And I just think that right in this moment, the best thing that you and I can do is just keep talking. But I feel very untethered in a way that I haven't maybe ever.
Okay, pause it for a sec. Meghan McCain is one of the most, a professional victim. She's been openly crying about how the left is so mean to her for many years at this point, and now she's pretending this is the first time she's voiced any personal discomfort related to her politics. She's the queen of that.
Her husband is fucking Puerto Rican too, not Jewish.
He's not Jewish?
No, not that I can tell.
But it's all they're coming for the white people.
I don't know if he's Jewish.
I don't see anything on either his or his dad's Wikipedia page to indicate it anyway. But so I don't know. Maybe he is. But
I mean, to paraphrase what Amy Schumer put on her Instagram, first they came for the Zionists and then they came for all the white people because that's exactly what those scary Arabs do.
I do know that. Yeah, Ben Dominic. I just know the one thing I've seen on his ethnicity is that he got really offended that people called him white because he had his family comes from people who have streets named after them in Puerto Rico. So,
well, his dad Douglas served as the U.S. Department of the Interior's White House liaison and Secretary of the Interior's Deputy Chief of Staff during H.W. Bush's administration. Founder of the Federalist. Got.
Hey, her husband's not Jewish. I just
exactly.
Imagine.
So now it's even crazier that she is
the
anti-Semitism crusader.
Yes, yeah. No. This is really just to borrow from Barnaby Rain. This is a moral panic here, and it's about suburban ladies feeling very, very unsafe because there might be some Muslim people that they might have to have an interaction with, and there are non-white people that are saying, hey, we don't approve of this genocide. How scary is that? In a child in Gaza
from the river
dying...
to Chuck E. Cheese.
A child in Gaza is dying I shouldn't be, your joke was so good I continued my smiling, but a child in Gaza is dying every 10 minutes. But you know what's most important? Is the sensibilities of wealthy white women who, have decided that this is a moment to center themselves.
Meghan McCain talking about how her and her husband are made up of a very strong constitution, so they usually wouldn't be nervous about terrorist attacks in Chuck E. Cheese. When Meghan McCain went on Seth Meyers in 2019 and was questioned rather adversarially, which she was not accustomed to, Ben Domenech tweeted, I see that Seth Meyers, the untalented piece of shit who only has his job because he regularly gargled Lorne Michaels' balls, went after my wife tonight with his idiotic anti-Semitic bullshit.
My wife.
So it seems as if this guy definitely has it all together when
Wait, why is it anti-Semitic?
I mean, what?
In 2019?
Yep.
To question Meghan McCain aggressively?
Yeah, she's
standing up for Jewish people.
She asked Seth Meyers in that interview, "What are you, Ilhan Omar's spokesperson?" Because I guess they were talking about some sort of censure or
I would just look up Eli Valley's Meghan McCain cartoon.
Which is anti-Semitic.
Apparently, yeah.
Oh, obviously.
A Jewish cartoonist of Meghan McCain.
Yes.
It's anti-Semitic.
All right, we got a little more of this?
There's not much else.
I mean, we got the Chuck E. Cheese thing, but yeah, we can get to it.
From the river to Chuck E. Cheese, really, Binder, just A+.
That way.
We've spoken about this privately at length at how, people have been scared for a long time.
Facts don't care about your
feelings. COVID and the lockdowns and stuff really magnified it and put a picture to it, I guess. But once the lockdowns lifted, I really thought things would go back to normal. But, in just a few weeks, 2020 is going to be 4 years ago, which sounds crazy.
Time's dilated.
Because so much has happened since then. But it feels like people aren't even at a 10 anymore. It feels like everyone's at a 14.
I totally agree.
Wow, these are deep thoughts here.
In my town where I live, there were some people that got into an argument at a bar, and instead of just leaving it at the argument at the bar, they went in and got in their car and just drove into the crowd.
Oh my God.
Because they're so pissed off.
All right, we're good.
I know what we're talking
honestly,
good stuff.
Can white women in this country just get out more, like slightly? She talks about the pandemic. Sounds like that made people who were already paranoid racists into even more paranoid racists. That's why there's this constant push to say that crime and violent crime is somehow up when we're seeing 2023 or historic drops after the pandemic and lockdowns began to subside. But, you know, it's really all about Meghan McCain's feelings. That's how we should center politics, is around white ladies' feelings.
I think we need to up the output of a true crime podcast. To get
exactly. Exactly. I mean,
You know
really.
what's wild about this, especially? Have you guys seen what Cindy McCain is up to? John McCain's
Yes.
widow? Cindy McCain is doing a complete turnaround. She is apparently Biden's executive director of the World Food Program. Like he put her in this position, and she's been out there calling for the fighting to stop in Gaza, calling for Israel to stop bombing Gaza so they can get humanitarian aid in. And she signed a ceasefire letter. Cindy McCain.
I love it.
Cindy McCain is to the left of Bernie Sanders.
Oh my God.
It's like Emma and Tim Pool with foreign policy.
Yeah. All right. I mean, whew.
Talk to your mom, Megan.
Yeah.
I think she might be. Is your mom a terrorist? Is she giving material aid to terrorists, Megan? The terrorism is coming from inside the house. The anti-Semitism. Oh my goodness.
I know.
And I just want to add too, Cindy McCain hasn't been like even like quietly doing this in the background. She's been on Al Jazeera, regularly for the past few weeks, talking about this stuff. Like she's putting herself out there, saying we need to help these people. It's going to get to a point where it's too late.
Oh my God, we have it here?
Can't get over it.
Well, I mean, what? Let's go, Cindy McCain.
Here's her on the BBC.
Cindy, we can see those lines of trucks just ready and waiting to go. Can you just tell us exactly what is in those trucks?
Well, in our convoy, I can speak to our convoys specifically. We have food. We're carrying medicine from WHO. We're carrying supplies from OEM, and I'm sure a few other things in there, but those are the three major items that we have going in that have been requested. And as you know, we have people on the ground already there that were previously there prior to this war. So we've been feeding, so far we've fed 522,000 people. But again, the supplies are running low. The stores where they can actually purchase items through our cash-based transfers are running low. They're just, things are going to become catastrophic very soon unless we can get these trucks in.
And what's your understanding as to what's delaying? I mean, obviously, we've seen some roadworks continuing because the road itself has been damaged going into Gaza. What do you get the sense is that is the major holdup on this?
Well, I think there's a lot of factions in all of this, and I can't speak to any of them because I'm not privy to it. I'm just on the receiving end of it, not being able to get my trucks in. I'm hoping that the powers that be, and I've talked to a lot of them, begin to take note and understand the importance and the absolute severity of this situation. I think people are beginning to listen. We're hoping tomorrow, fingers crossed for tomorrow. But in the meantime, we're going to keep plugging along.
And Cindy, even if those trucks do start moving.
Appreciate it, Cindy. I mean, she's called for a ceasefire. This is more in her role as, I guess, with what is her? She's the chief of the World Food Program, so that's why she's focusing on that. But
on the BBC, yeah, I mean,
pretty amazing. Good for her.
I mean, talk to your daughter.
Some people, they just the chains broken free. No,
yeah,
no.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Hey,
a life after your husband passes away, a whole new person. It's your chance to really spread your wings and fly. And Cindy McCain, she's going for it.
Cindy McCain for president? Question mark.
I've seen this happen where a woman's partner dies in older age, and it turns out that actually there was a lot of suppression going on. I'm not saying that's what's going on with Cindy McCain here, but it is a actual dynamic that is interesting, and good on Cindy McCain for standing up for ceasefire.
Yep.
Honestly, come on. I mean, it's almost like so late now in the game where it's like, I would welcome Bernie this minute coming out for a ceasefire, but it's like, what the fuck what have we been doing?
You've got to think that it's just him cowering to the Biden administration, and he's saying everything except ceasefire, but it's just it doesn't matter. I agree. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from?
Hi, is this me?
That's you. It is you. Yes.
Oh, sweet. Can you hear me okay? I work for the post office, so I'm trying to keep working.
Yeah,
but if the
you actually sound
headset
great.
isn't good.
You sound good.
Oh, awesome. Nice. All right. Brian calling from the Chicago suburbs.
Brian from the Chicago suburbs. What's on your mind?
Obviously, I live relatively close to Plainfield, where that Palestinian child was murdered by the landlord. So that's been affecting me, especially because I heard, he looked to him like a grandfather almost, and just was running up to him to give him a hug when he got stabbed to death. So, that's been affecting me, and just some of the videos I've seen, obviously, what's his name? Jackson Hinkle or whatever, posted a video. He's still trash, but broken clocks right twice a day. Where this man was carrying his daughter into a hospital, and he was very desperate and, looking for help. The doctors couldn't do anything, and she had died in his arms. And the kid was under the age of 2, by the looks of it. And that's about my daughter's age. And I just, ever since, it's just burned into my mind, and I can't stop crying about it.
Yeah. I know.
And my mom, my wife is a therapist, and she works at a practice that is run by a Palestinian American and works with a lot of Palestinian American clients. And it's just been, obviously very difficult. She has to try to help these people process all this, and it's just kind of when it continues happening, and there's no seeming end to it. It's just, it's kind of hard, because it's like, what do you tell them? It's like yeah. It's going to be okay. Because is it going to be okay? Who knows? And it's just, I don't really know how the Hatch Act applies to this kind of talk, because I don't know if you're familiar with that, where it's, federal employees can't do political kind of stuff, at least, while representing the agencies, as like, i.e. the post office. But I needed to do something, so I wrote on my back window, that like the actions of Hamas don't justify the slaughter of Palestinian civilians, and that we need to call for a ceasefire, or we need to call for an end to the genocide in Gaza now. But I needed to do something, and my heart breaks for all these people just dealing with this. And Rashida Tlaib, I want to try to reach out to her somehow. I don't know what the best way to do that is, to show my support and solidarity with her. I don't know if it's just through like Twitter or something, but I think calling her office would need to be, I think only really constituents can do that. But
no, you could call. You don't have to be a constituent. You could call her at her office.
Yeah, because
probably call the DC line instead of the local office, though.
Yeah, for sure. Because what she's doing is so powerful, and I was even crying a bit when you guys played that video for Speech earlier, it's just.
I would have cried if it was the first time I saw it on air. I just did that one privately, so trying to minimize it.
And one thing I can't. It's what's going on, like that Gal Gadot showing of the atrocities of October 7th. It's so like it's so tenured and unreflective, because I'm sorry, like I have seen some of the most horrible things. I've seen a father holding his kid whose head is empty.
Yep,
with a giant
I saw that
hole in the side of it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to think that violence against Jews is any more is counted any more than what we're seeing against Palestinians. And you cannot narrate 1,400 deaths or whatever the final tally comes out to be more than 10,000 that. And so, like, I agree with you. Like,
you're not alone, Brian. Thank you.
Well, my last thought, it's really opened my eyes to family members of mine. My brother, I've always, looked up to him. He's my older brother, but I heard that he's he's been pretty kind of unequivocal in his support for Israel in this, and it's really kind of messed me up.
I'm having the same issues with people in my life where I thought they were good, liberals, and they're like not speaking to me, some of them. So
well,
it's been we're all going through it, But appreciate the call, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone who can't at least respect your position on this isn't worth your time. That's how I view it.
Yeah.
Well, what's depressing now is I understand the naive Zionist who's been propagandized his entire life, like on October 9th or whatever, right? Because it seems a bit premature. But to go and see all of this and to still be like, well, we're defending ourselves is sick.
Yep. Calling from a 608 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 608. 608. I think I hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Give me 1 second here.
Okay.
I'm at work.
No problem.
All right.
I like that devilish laugh.
We've been getting a bunch of good people calling on the job stuff.
Yeah, we appreciate it over here.
That's us taking from the capitalist that is oppressing you. So good.
Yep.
Something about pooping on the company dime. We try to do what we can here.
Hell yeah.
My name's Ben. I'm calling from Wisconsin and stupid Van Orden's district. If that means
that's
anything.
That's got to be the new Majority Report call-in slogan. Boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I call Majority Report on company time. There you go.
There we go.
I'm totally okay with that being. I'm totally okay with that. I had a comment, and it's a little hard because we have to kind of turn. All the talk of Israel and Palestine makes this really hard because in the background there's the Joe Biden issue supporting everything, and I hate it. I hate everything going on with his support, and it just turns my stomach. And I'm a white guy that lives in the Midwest, and this hurts my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rough, and I feel sympathy for everyone going over there, and it just feels very powerless. But at the same point, we do have some power. We have the ability to vote. It's not our only power, but it is one. And, and in a year from now, we're going to have to make this decision about who to vote for. On that note, something I've heard you guys talk about before is, there's been this discussion, like if you live in a purple state, you have to make a tough choice about who you're going to vote for the better of the country. And this is not strictly you guys. I've heard this from other people, but it's like, if you live in a big, deep blue state like New York or California, you have the luxury to, vote your conscience. And I take a little roughness with that because it makes it feel like it's acknowledging that, if you vote for someone, if you live in a deep blue state, you get to have the privilege of doing something so that it doesn't hurt your conscience.
Mm-hmm.
But if you live in a purple state, then you have to suck it up and do it for the other people. And I feel like that sort of undermines solidarity. And I feel like if there's going to be any advocacy for people on border states to do that, it should be advocated for everyone in the movement.
Well, Ben, okay. So one, I just think that, the framing of voting as a moral act is the wrong framing a bit.
Right. But I agree.
Let me just say this quickly. I've said that, I maybe differ from some people, even though I live in a blue state. I vote for the Democrat in the general election because I want other people to do that in other states. So that's like a little bit.
I appreciate that. Yep.
Yeah, but I also respect people that don't, right? In the same way, like they're making their own choices. But the point though is just that I think it's a strategic decision. Like voting is strategy, so it does differ from state to state. And I also do think though that focusing on the electoral elements of this right now with Biden, we still have a year out, right? And
exactly. No, and I had this comment lined up and I didn't have anything else. And obviously with conversation, it's not the best time, but I never know what I'm going to get on when you call these calls. So it's just the thing I had in the
I got you.
In the socket.
All right. Well, Ben, still though, just keep your head up. I appreciate the comment. And I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I think conscious. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I had one other comment, but go ahead, Matt.
No, you go, and then we'll comment.
We'll let you go, and then Matt can remark.
That's okay. It was a completely other tangent, and if you guys want to talk about it, it's not fine. I work at one of the universities, and currently, we just had a meeting about the pay situation in Wisconsin. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but Robin Voss is currently basically holding the entire university system hostage in terms of the pay increases for university staff, unless they cut all DEI programs. So far that's at an impasse, and I think the governor is currently suing them for that. So that's the other kind of local news. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on that, but that was the other comment I was going to make quick.
Yeah, well, can't get those stupid, Republicans out of there fast enough now that the government is, or the state Supreme Court is Democratic. So that's the hope there is It
is my hope that, we're going to see a huge turnout for state elections in Wisconsin next year, let alone national, just for that reason alone.
Well, appreciate the call, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good guys. Left is best.
Left is best.
Yeah, I think my comment just on the voting thing is I think conscious is absolutely overrated on voting, and the whole thing is to whichever coalition is empowered. That said, I have zero interest in. I don't think I think that it's overstated the amount of solidarity that is done by saying, okay, fine, I'll vote for Biden. I think the same sort of thing can be accomplished by networking with vote swaps and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think all that stuff is done, but voting isn't people can say, okay, voting can be a moral act, and I think people who want to not vote for Biden after this are completely within their rights to do it, and it's a morally righteous thing to do. It's also insignificant. It doesn't mean much. So all of this talk on a year from now election day to me is not that interesting. I think people are going to vote how they vote, and my thing is generally. I want the Labor Coalition and the Social Justice Coalition, whichever party is that, to be successful. And I have no illusions about the executive. And I just think that also comes to the point where I think it's preferable that Biden is in office for this than a Republican.
We saw this with the debate last night.
Because,
finish them.
Whether it would have an influence on Israel's actions or not, I'm not sure. Because I think Biden is doing a lot of stuff for show. But it's making a very clear political educational point, which is that the Democrats have as much blood on their hands as Republicans, because what they would be doing is email fundraising off of this when they actually would have intended to do exactly what they're doing right now. Mm-hmm. And so that's just another thing why I just don't really with regards to the theory that we can withhold our vote from elections as a, I guess, audience of podcasts and stuff like that. That is more interesting to me when a union or someone like that is leading it than somebody who is trying to plug a Patreon.
Yep.
Also, the idea that the cohort of progressives or leftists that are going to hold their vote or threatening to hold their vote is the cohort that's actually going to matter in the election is ludicrous. Now, as much as I wish that the left and progressives were that strong, I mean, their real problem is with the Muslim and Arab democratic communities. We're seeing that in the polls. And I'm sorry, you can't go up to them and say, yeah, sorry your relatives or your cousins are dying over in Gaza, but you got to vote blue no matter who.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sorry. That's not going to work. That's where you actually got to fucking do the work and show them that, you're actually going to do something that matters to their lives.
Yeah.
Yep. And if Biden loses the election and that is where it comes from, I am happy to blame that on the fucking administration that stood idly by as 10,000 people were bombed and counting. I have zero interest in blaming that eventuality on the voters. This is a Democratic Party problem, and it always is. I think that about. Both sides vote blame, right? The Democratic partisans vote blame, but also the anti-Democrat. You're actually responsible for the policy in Gaza if you voted for Joe Biden because of labor or social justice or whatever. I think both of those people are sick in the head, and they're fundamentally anti-people because they're blaming the voters instead of the power structure.
Yep.
Also, it's not too late. Like, that's the thing. Why are we pushing for this? Because it's not too late, man. And no one who matters listens. Maybe they do, but no one who matters listens to me. But it's not too late. It's not too late.
We can still save lives. Yeah.
Do the right thing. And if you can't look at it that way, save the election. Make sure that you guys win. I mean, it's that simple. Like, it's not that hard.
Yep, it's not. But Biden seems ideologically committed to this, which is the thing that just sticks in my craw most of all. Let's play this quickly, and then we'll do the something from the debate. I want to do 6. We've highlighted the really brave actions of the members of the squad, plus the folks in Congress who are calling for a ceasefire, as they should be, including Cori Bush, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Greg Kassar, Jamal Bowman, Maxwell Frost, the list goes on, Velasquez, right? The list goes on and on.
Velasquez, Delia Ramirez.
Actually, it doesn't go on and on. It does not go on and on enough. But the point is I don't have the full list in front of me. Those folks deserve our full support. But some of these debates are happening down at the state level as well. And in Florida, this state representative named Angie Nixon, she represents the Jacksonville area, introduced a resolution which received just 2 yes votes and was smeared as anti-Semitic by Republicans and some Democrats, basically trying to call for an end to the violence. And the resolution had the line, de-escalation and ceasefire in the state of Israel and occupied Palestine. So, of course, anti-Semitic for saying what literally every respected human rights group and international organizations that cover this have said. I mean, she could have called it apartheid, and that would still be in keeping with what the UN, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch have said, etc. And this is her basically pleading on the floor of the pretty deep red Republican state house down in Florida. And one of her colleagues says something that is very scary.
We are at 10,000 dead Palestinians. How many will be enough? One of my colleagues just said all of them. Wow. One of my colleagues said all of them. One of my colleagues also stated that this is going to dry up their fundraising if we vote on this resolution.
Sick.
I also want that, like, that's what we've become in this state. That's what we've become in this state, where we don't care about innocent babies that don't even get the opportunity to blow out their first birthday candle.
Yeah, that is, if you could hear it a little bit in the background, but that was Representative Michelle Salzman. Do we know if she's a Republican?
The one who said, we should be clear, the one who's, because if you're listening to the
all
audio, you might, yeah, the one who said all of them. The rep, who was the rep who had that speech? Because she's great. People
Angie
should
Nixon,
know who she is.
Democrat
Yes.
from the Jacksonville area. So, I mean, incredible courage. Just the fact that it just received just 2 yes votes, as she pleads like that. You know, the pro-Israel lobby is and fundraising down in Florida is fairly robust.
Blood-soaked liars.
That was in part of why Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was one of the 22 Democrats to vote to censure Rashida Tlaib shamefully. She's there is a ton of that money down there, and so that is what those representatives are speaking out and saying, hey, I can't support this because my fundraising will dry up.
Yeah, I mean, exactly right. And I want to point out this Washington Post article from March 6, 2008 by Doug Rossenow. The dark roots of AIPAC, America's pro-Israel lobby. The group was formed to spin positive PR after Israeli atrocities. Go ahead, next one, Bradley. Let me back up a little bit here. But on October 15th, 1953, all hell broke loose. News spread that an Israeli army unit had struck into the Jordanian-occupied West Bank and committed a massacre of the Palestinian village of Kibbutz, killing more than 60 civilians indiscriminately in retaliation for the murder of a Jewish woman and her 2 children in Israel on the night of October 12th.
Yeah.
Time magazine carried a shocking account of the deliberate and even casual mass murder by Israeli soldiers at Kibbutz. Slouching, smoking, and joking. The New York Times ran extensive excerpts from a UN commission that refuted Israeli lies about the incidents. Israel's most active U.S. supporters realized how severe the danger of damage to Israel was. Kennan wrote of the ill effect of Kibbutz of what he called our propaganda. After Kibbutz, Dulles confirmed for the first time that Washington was holding up aid to Israel. The United States supported a censure of Israel in the UN Security Council. U.S. aid soon resumed after Israel pledged it would stop work at the controversial water diversion site. And I'll also recommend a piece in 972 magazine on this exact same massacre. It's called How the Israeli Media Covers Massacres, Lessons from 1953. Just the subhead. The killing was justified. The terrorists hid among the civilian population. The West is anti-Semitic. And on second thought, perhaps the whole thing never actually happened. This exact same progression. They've run in the exact same playbook about massacring Palestinians for this entire time, for
Decades.
75 years at least. And, that's just that. And so when you see all these people who censure Tlaib, that they've taken tens of thousands of dollars without exception, and often hundreds of thousands of dollars from that lobby which exists to lie about the massacres of Palestinians by Israel.
And I want to say too, I mean, Angie Nixon, someone really to watch, I think, honestly, as progressives, and we look at people who have the moral courage to stand for the right things. Nixon, who was once a field organizer for a union, is usually aligned with the progressive wing of the party, and in 2022 helped organize an impromptu protest on the House floor in opposition to a congressional map pushed by Governor Ron DeSantis. The protest shut down the House for roughly an hour. So yeah, former field organizer for a union, somebody who has stood up for the right things and is incredibly brave there. History will remember these folks. So,
yeah, even if they outlaw it in Israel, as they have.
Oh, the anti-war protests?
No, well, that and 25 years ago they banned the works of Pappy and the new historians Avi Shlaim because they couldn't deal with it.
Yeah, the democracy. I mean, the
Democracy
only democracy
in
in the Middle East.
Yeah, pioneering the CRT panic and shit like that because they can't face the history of the country.
Let's now do this clip from last night. We'll do number 8. So, last night, you might have tuned into our coverage, had a few drinks, had some fun, finally, at work, because the news has been so atrocious that it's gotten us all down. But making fun of these right-wingers is always something to lift our spirits. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy is not well liked by Nikki Haley. I feel like this goes back for a few debates at this point. She has open resentment. And they were talking about TikTok, okay, and how it needs to be banned because Republican critiques of big tech are like not systemic at all. It's just, well, we need the good guys to run it like Elon Musk. And then when China has a social media app, that's inherently horrible because it's scary Chinese people. It's just about the right kind of tech for the right, as opposed to what is the systemic analysis of what this is doing to our society, okay?
And for folks who want a little bit of context on that in the American tech, I would recommend Yasha Levine's Surveillance Valley and the amount of sort of infiltration of American spies in the social networks we know and love here.
I mean, we could. There were many stories during the Obama administration about and I think this was in the Snowden revelations here, that like our American tech companies were more and more than willing to fork over information to the government in order to surveil people.
And with like board members, of course.
Yes.
Spy tech and all that stuff.
So it's obviously racist analysis. I think that's quite clear. But the fun part is that Ramaswamy, in talking about TikTok, brings up Nikki Haley's daughter, and she does not like that.
We've talked about this. You campaign on TikTok. How do you get TikTok banned if you use it? Well, I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which is about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my
before
daughter
preaching to
out of your
anybody else, your
voice.
adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy
scum.
answer is actually to say that we're just going to ban one app. We got to go further. We have to ban any U.S. company actually transferring U.S. data to the Chinese. Here's a story most people don't know. Airbnb hands over U.S. user data.
I know, who cares? We just wanted
It's just for the face, honestly, the face cam.
and the
of
line, "You're
Nikki.
just scum. You're just scum." She really hates that guy. She really hates that guy.
Also, it points out that none of them are serious about that.
Oh,
actually.
no.
Like the TikTok stuff is just red meat to red bait China, and it is interesting. They have,
but
completely-
another thing to bring up here, though, is that there are a lot of liberals who are now helping facilitate this anti-TikTok rhetoric because the kids are getting their information off TikTok about Israel Palestine, and that's no good because that's got to be why so many children are unhappy with what's going on in Gaza. I mean, we're really seeing this come out of the woodwork here. And remember what this is all about. This is twofold. It is very xenophobic, anti-Chinese rhetoric to sort of spew that stuff. But it's also just they don't want people to find a place of their own that has information that they want to find. Are there problems with TikTok? Of course, the same problems that you can find on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all of these platforms. I've written about it. I've spoken about it immensely. Are there situations where TikTok has its own unique problems? Sure, just like unique problems to YouTube and unique problems to Facebook and unique problems to every one of these social media platforms. There is nothing inherently about TikTok that makes it any so dramatically worse. And even if it did, there's anything inherently about TikTok that requires the US government to step in and ban it. In fact, TikTok as a company has gone out of their way to break ties with China, where their home, parent company ByteDance is located, and have all their data here in the company managed by a major tech company right here in the US. So the idea that TikTok is continued to this day be a target specifically above any other company is ludicrous, and you should know there's something more behind it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well said. This is about controlling the information that people are getting directly from Gaza. And like, we don't even see a great majority of what would be seen if the Israeli government was not cutting off internet and fuel, so that people are unable to actually like film, and they weren't, killing journalists in mass, regardless of their press vests and helmets, so that the word could be, it isn't getting out. That is the part of this that scares them the most, is like information platforms that they do not have the ability to influence. I think that's part of it, right? I mean, TikTok.
They do.
Isn't gonna...
That's the thing too. TikTok. There's nothing about TikTok like embedded in the system. Like China isn't stepping in to make sure that pro-Israeli government content isn't flowing. I mean, I found when those TikTok spread of some Israeli TikToker over in Tel Aviv dancing to a song while the text says like looking forward to the theme parks and water parks that are going to spring up in Gaza. Yeah. You go to I've gone to those TikToks on TikTok, and they have plenty of likes. They have millions of views and likes, tons of supportive comments. There's nothing inherently about TikTok that's stifling that. China's not stepping in and saying, we won't let any pro-Israel content out. No, it's disseminated in that, in those circles, and it does well in those circles. The problem is that the vast majority of people on TikTok are young people who just happen to be, not because of TikTok directly, but because they are just more progressive. They care more about these issues. They care more about injustice all over the world, that they just happen to go to content that reflects that. And does TikTok help get them to that content? Sure, it does so, because it sees that they're already going to that content, and the algorithm steps in and says, oh, they're looking for this stuff. We'll give them more of it. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, and it that's the way all algorithms work when it comes to these social media companies. But to my point though, like the reason that there's that hysteria in Washington is because perhaps TikTok is not necessarily like entirely beholden or intertwined with U.S. interests in the same way that other tech companies would in terms of like their collaboration. So they have this panic about it. And it works well with the xenophobia that both sides are engaged in. You know, I still balk at the fact that Biden's domestic agenda when it came to investment in like onshoring some of the production of things and through the CHIPS Act has to go through the only way he felt he could get it passed. And frankly, Chuck Schumer engaged in this enthusiastically in his help with this bill was through basically China hawkery. That's what the CHIPS Act stands for, right? I forget exactly what the acronym is, but it's related to China.
I mean,
and that has effects on people, Asian Americans in the United States, we should say.
I mean, we could just use Facebook as a great example in terms of the most analogous situation here. There have been reports from various NGOs, I believe off the top of my head, Amnesty is one of them, that said that Facebook helped facilitate a genocide in Myanmar.
Yeah.
There was no calls, no one stepping in to say ban Facebook. There was no calls to eliminate Facebook from the United States or put some sort of special rules just on Facebook. No, of course not.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, we're gonna take one more call here. I think we have time for one more. Let's see. I'll pick someone at random here. Calling from an 386 area code. Who's this? Where you're calling from?
Is this me?
Yes, this is you.
This is my first time calling.
Oh, wow.
My name is Alex. I'm from Florida, Daytona.
Alex from
long-time
Florida.
listener.
Nice to hear from you.
Nice to hear from you guys. I was just calling because I did live in Israel for 9 months in 2014. I did the Birthright trip propaganda tour they do, and I extended my visa. I worked on a few kibbutzim out there. Sorry, I'm nervous.
No, you're doing great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to call to just remind everybody that there are normal Israelis out there, like not genocidal. You know what I mean? Like,
of course. Yeah, no, I'm glad you're calling in, but yeah, I want people to. This is important, obviously. Yes, of course. I mean,
course.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just want to. I think it's important. I think this is important, right?
I'm 29. The people I met there are my age. Like we, got along, and they were just born into this country, and I met Palestinians too in the West Bank and everything, and it just breaks my heart that I lived there in 2014, and it just seems like it's not going to get better. But maybe
Caller, did you
one day,
Yeah, Caller, did you hear we had somebody from the West Bank call in? I believe, was it yesterday or Monday?
Gotta be Monday.
Did you hear that by any chance? I don't know if we've clipped it.
I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't recall.
The overarching theme was, he feels very isolated. That he mentioned like basically going on across the street was a Little League baseball game as if everything's going on normal, and he's sort of like.
I'm a lefty in Florida, like.
Yeah, right. I'm just curious, when you were there, like, what was the sense of like how open could people be about that? Did they have to be kind of cagey? Like, what was your sense of like how open you could be about politics?
It's if young people are talking to other young people, there's definitely a comfort there. It's the older generation. It's kind of like talking to your grandpa about Trump. You know what I mean? You gotta play that. You gotta play it by their terms.
Right.
But
it feels like. It feels like over there is very much like, how America was post 9/11, and I'm not talking about October 7th either. Like Israel has a sustained sort of post 9/11 feel to it in terms of how far right its government's gone and how they've seemed to have successfully convinced a good portion of the people there that they need to reflect that, or the terrorists win or something like that. And again, I'm not talking about.
It's always been like that. It's this.
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. Right.
It's just another page in their book. I mean, you got people who are 29, 30, 32, who have trauma, who have family that have been killed, and they're less genocidal than the settlers that come there from New York or New Jersey or wherever the heck they come from, you know, and the people who actually have lost something are more like sensible and humanitarian than these religious fundamentalists. It blows me away. You know, I did that 10-day tour for Birthright. They tried to convince me to, you know, buy into the Zionism, and it doesn't work on everybody, and it's not going to. You know, I'm an American first.
Yeah.
And the American fundament, you know, where we, especially younger people, we're into freedom.
I'm joking with you. No, but like,
you know what I mean?
That's
like,
a great. No, I think that's a great. You know, I think that's a great point because, like, you know, a lot of the conflation is, oh, anti-Zionism means that, like, you want, and this is the same thing with the slogan that's Rashida Tlaib got censored for. Anti-Zionism means that you want to, like, expel the Jewish people from the. No, the Jewish people are there too, and they've been there. And the whole point is that everyone who lives in that region needs to live together peacefully, equally under the law, and that one group can't be seen as above the other in the eyes of the law, and they'd be able to move freely throughout and go wherever they'd like without anyone militarily telling them what they can and cannot do.
Right. So my advice is for any fellow American Jews out there, or anybody, you know, talking to their family, trying to convince them about our perspective. We can use other examples. I use South Africa a lot as an example. I know a lot of people don't know, but, you know, it is South Africa multiplied by religion. It's just completely inflated because of this religion aspect to it and the Zionist part of it. But history rhymes. And I'm trying to convince my people. And people also need to remember that nobody's a monolith. I have a trans Jewish aunt who's a Trump supporter. I have people in my family that are still crazy and bigoted and like all this stuff. And I do everything I can. You know, I'm in Florida. It seems hopeless sometimes, but I do want to remind people progress is slow, and we take it one day at a time.
On that note,
you know,
caller, there's this Washington Post article from 1979, Israel and Rhodesia, a double standard. With the Rhodesian elections coming up next week, one is struck yet again by the dichotomy that marks American policy towards Israel on the one hand and toward Rhodesia on the other. The two nations share many common traits. Israel is an island of Jews set in a sea of Arabs. Rhodesia is a peninsula of whites washed by an ocean of blacks. Like, we just see, like, the sort of racist.
Yeah.
Both are regarded by the neighbors as colonial states. Those neighbors are just, you know, accurate. While pockets of Jews has lived in the Holy Land since biblical times, the great majority, like the great majority of white Rhodesians, arrived, were born in their new homeland after World War II. I mean, you know, it's not really that provocative to put these in the same context. But you're right. Like, it's the immediate. I mean, the Holocaust context, which you know, is obviously different.
Yes.
But fundamentally, the structure is playing out the same way.
Appreciate the call.
Right.
Caller.
I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Love you too.
Yeah, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
I mean, some like the caller was saying, some of the bravest voices, honestly,
Well,
have been coming out of Israel. Yeah.
Let me actually, I because, you know, we just had a caller call in and say that it's the settlers that are driving the most genocidal rhetoric against the Palestinian people, and that the people who have experienced grief and loss and who you know, the families of the hostages, or the families of people like this man who was interviewed by Oren Ziv of 972 magazine, a progressive magazine in Israel. His name is Maoz Inon. I'm sorry if I butchered his name here. Who had people murdered on October 7th in his family. His parents, both. Wow. Speaking outside of a protest tent, or at a protest tent. He started it, actually, outside of the Israeli parliament in Jerusalem. And this is what he had to say.
Again, to ask Netanyahu to go? Or do you have to wait for the end of the war? Or
Because because of your question,
yes,
and your leaders and world leaders that are waiting for the war to stop before they will stop supporting Israeli government, the war would never end. the war would never end as long as Netanyahu is in his office. So I'm crying to the world, don't support Netanyahu. Don't send us weapons. Don't send us ships of war. Send us peace. Send us love. Send us reconciliation.
I have another question. You said all of the things.
Send us peace, send us love, send us reconciliation. Do not send us weapons.
Sorry, here's some more bombs.
Yeah. I mean, no. Let's not just send Israel the $3+ billion a year that we give them, the top recipient of our military aid in weapons. Let's more than quadruple that figure in a short period of time and do $14 billion to aid in the genocide, in the bombing of a population that can't even go anywhere without Israel's approval and is too poor to travel, and, dropping the same amount of bombs in 1 week in Gaza, in a 141 square mile area that the United States did in its heaviest year, the first year in Afghanistan, a country that's 250,000 square miles. I mean, that makes it clear. But Israel needs more weapons. So, I mean, those people speaking out against what the far right government of Israel is doing from within Israel are some of the bravest people in that we can highlight.
And standing
it's
with
not
Israel.
Safe.
Yeah,
it's
exactly,
not safe
Peter.
for them to do it either, because
Yep.
there's been videos of extremists in Israel, hardcore far right and Netanyahu supporters physically attacking them. These are families who lost people earlier last month by Hamas. So these are people whose family potentially might still be alive as hostages, held by Hamas, and they're the ones speaking out strongest about, we need to find a way that doesn't just continuously follow this cycle of eye for an eye.
Yeah, and that's why I stress. I don't say Israelis. I say Zionists, because I think that, like you said, there's not even a monolith among Israelis about this. Particularly the people who had family kidnapped are calling for ceasefires and that sort of thing. And Bibi Netanyahu is reportedly trying to influence them in pretty unseemly ways. But we have this clip of a Holocaust survivor on Democracy Now! I think coming to Rashid Tlaib's defense, and also making this exact same point about basically defund Israel.
I totally support her comments, and I think it is, on top of that, shameful that her justified defense of human lives is considered anti-Semitic. It is pro-human beings. I find it horrific that the politicians have the nerve to censure righteous voices for peace and for the lives of Gazans who are being murdered. It is slaughter that is happening. And Rashida Tlaib is, in my eyes, a hero. Netanyahu's government, Israel's policies for decades has been the suppression of Palestinians, land grabs, deprivation of Palestinians. It is painful for me as someone who has experienced all of the terrors that Gazans are experiencing, and even the horrific attacks in Israel by Hamas. But Hamas' attack on Israel does not justify the slaughter of women and children, especially children. I was a child of war. I have experienced all of these things. I've also known for a fact that what Israel is doing will not end this conflict. It will only exacerbate it. It will increase resistance to anything. I think that Biden needs to defund all of the money that is given to Israel, I think he should not only call for a ceasefire, I think he needs to start thinking about peace.
Yep. That's the thing. The ceasefire is the bare minimum.
That's the next dialectical step. And,
Yes.
you know, this is a place that you can go back to David Cameron and Ed Miliband in like 2014 or 15. And they're saying, hey, just because some rockets hit IDF installments doesn't mean you get to flatten apartment complexes.
Yes.
And also, it's not just a ceasefire that we need. And so David Cameron said the word ceasefire. Ed Miliband got on him and said, hey, it's not just enough to call for a ceasefire. We need a resolution to what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank. And actually, like, so and that's honestly why we are seeing the political class not want to give into ceasefire, because they don't want to address what's after that.
Yep. And I just want to say too, I mean, to her, like, people would say, well, then what is Israel going to do without our weapons? And you know, they still need to defend themselves. I encourage people to check out the interview I did some months ago. Can you look this up with Anthony Lowenstein when it was about his book, The Palestine Laboratory, How Israel Exports the Technology of Occupation Around the World. And it is about how the Israeli military-industrial complex, I mean, it's now one of the 10 most profitable in the entire world, despite the relative small size of the country of Israel. And that is because of the decades and decades of military technology that the United States has provided to them. I did this interview in June 8th of this year. Thank you, Bradley. And it's become self-sustaining at this point. It's massively wealthy and massively profitable, and they export it to countries like India to do surveillance on Muslims in Kashmir. So, I mean, like, that is, you know, where we are at right now with Israel's capabilities. This is not a country that is lacking for resources on the military and weapons front.
Look, if we're so important, we get to start dictating some of the fucking terms.
Yeah.
And we are not going to be doing this Jim Crow shit, and we're not going to be doing this dispossession shit. We are going to be doing a one state. If we're going to pay utopia prices, it's not going to be for a Jim Crow in the desert. It is going to be for one state from the river to the sea, democratic and safe for everyone. And I have no problem. I'm not like Tucker Carlson, where I'm really worried about like what this costs taxpayers. I think we have an obligation to both Palestinians and Jews in that area to make sure there is peace and that they can live alongside it and actually promote democracy in there. I don't think our State Department is really set up to do that, but I ultimately think it's something we are sort of obligated to the world to do after creating this mess. That's where it's at. Like, if you need us so much, then you're going to take some fucking medicine, because I'm so sick of seeing the treatment of even Palestinians living within Israel. It's disgusting, and I'm not like content with another cent going out this door unless it is to repairing that damage.
I just wanted to give a little context of the two people we watched also, for people who maybe hadn't watched prior. Maoz Inan on October 15th, so only about a week after his parents were killed on October 7th, was on the BBC and said something similar. I'm not crying for my parents, because he was emotional on the broadcast. I am crying for all those who will lose their lives in this war. We must stop this war. That was only 8 days after his parents were killed by Hamas. And then this woman here, Marianne Ingram, who we played earlier in the week, who had been outside the White House all week protesting and calling for a ceasefire, 87 years old, a survivor of the Holocaust. I think sometimes when people do experience, like, as you said, their family being killed, that immense grief, their experience some level of apartheid, a level of collective punishment, it does not inspire one to want to commit that against other people.
Mhm.
It does not inspire a compounding interest in extending that apartheid to others, or making it so that somebody else experiences that as a result of their experience, as a result of their own oppression. Norman Finkelstein's parents were both survivors of the Holocaust. They were a part of the Warsaw Uprising, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and he always says that is his guiding light to advocate for Palestinians, because they rose up in opposition to their oppressors. So the Palestinians, in some respects, how could you not see that as a similar fight, as a similar friction, as a similar resistance?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm paraphrasing, but many of the Jewish Voice for Peace activists chant "never again" for anyone. All right, folks, that's it for call today. I'm gonna read some IMs and get out of here. War Sucks says Palestinians and Israeli polling has one state solution very unpopular. Do we just force it on both parties if neither want it? Well, we have to have a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and we need to have some sort of like actually good faith negotiations on that front. You know,
Like everything
we're not
that-
forcing it on anybody, but I mean, Palestinians don't have any democracy right now, so you have to empower them first.
Everything that Israel says about we don't have a partner for peace that genuinely like wants our right to exist is projection.
Yeah.
And so this like we can't. This needs to be imposed by the world powers, and probably with our lead. But like the Israel, the government itself. Is not going to be able to handle this. The way that they're going to handle this is expelling and killing Palestinians. And so the world needs to step up and grow a backbone. And I'm not sure how we do that with one party that is like, hey, he's doing that thing we don't want to admit is what we've been accusing all of our other foes on the world stage of genocide or ethnic cleansing. And then the others, but we're going to support it anyway. And there's no chance of a ceasefire. And the other side saying, yeah, kill them all. But ultimately that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm fine with whatever both the people of Israel and the people of Palestine, agree to, whatever they want and can get to. That's for me. That's what we need to. Right. Obviously, that's good. But in terms of like the U.S. government's position, what the people of a country wanted ever been a part of their calculation? I mean, we've seen.
Yeah, but just to your point though, Blinken is now saying, well, let's have the Palestinian Authority take over Gaza after this. Oh, cool. Like, you've made that choice. What about the Palestinians and what they want? Because the Palestinian Authority is deeply unpopular. Got news for him. Because they're seen as a puppet of the Israeli government.
Because
they are. And that's why he's promoting it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, why doesn't anyone give a shit what Palestinians want?
They want them out. And Israel, if Israel wants to keep claiming that it is a multi-ethnic democracy, it can start fucking proving it.
I mean, I'm sorry, even the Palestinians that live in Israel, like, they're denied land.
Yeah.
Like, the Palestinians within Israel that technically are citizens, they are discriminated against in ways that are like, would be shocking to most people if they heard about it. Jim Crow-esque, obviously. Yeah. Eric Adams DoorDash says, this has been a misunderstanding. They weren't Turkish donors. I asked my staff for Turkish donors. I mean, have you tried kebabs? They're delicious. Also, I don't actually eat meat because I'm a vegan. Have you tried this white sauce on the pita? What's that tang? Is that yogurt?
I have no idea what that's referring to.
It's about Eric Adams' Turkish order.
I see.
Cool. Now I want some Turkish food though. Kowalski from Nebraska. The debate last night made me want the gays to hurry up and destroy the American empire. None of these people, nor the two grave-dodging frontrunners, deserve to wield the power of the American empire. Not to sound conspiratorial, but Secretary Pete Buttigieg is the most powerful gay man in government, has not done anything to rebuild our transportation infrastructure. Is that how the gays destroy empire? I'm confused. I blame harvest madness. Left is corn, I mean best. Secret sauce for destruction says Michelle Salzman's district is also Matt Gaetz's district. Interesting. That was the Republican who said that horrible thing in the Florida state clip that we played. Number 13 says, even before October 7th, many organizations, including the Trash ADL, were complaining about actual anti-Semitism from Twitter since Musk's takeover. Little to no politicians have criticized Twitter about this, even with their renewed false concern about anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I'm very cynical about the whole, what do they call it, kayfabe between Elon Musk and the ADL. I think both of those are two sides of the same coin.
Oh, ADL threw in the towel before this. ADL threw in the towel at Musk and conceded victory to him, like in days. They claim that he spoke with them, and even though Musk went right back to doing the same stuff, and they said they would get back to not only did they squash their issue with Musk, they went back to paying Twitter to advertise.
Look, this is a
and then shortly after, no more than weeks later, at the very most, Chayarychik of Libs of TikTok said she was going to sue the ADL because they listed her on. She had a profile on their site where they list people who take part in hate. And she's a major name in the anti-LGBTQ space. And she threatened to sue them. And instead of holding strong on it, they removed her profile. They took her off the site.
Yeah.
So
I've never seen that. I've never seen any anti-extremism organization ever do a move like that.
Because that's not what it is.
I've never seen it.
It's a racist organization.
Yeah.
And I pointed out the other day, the ADL recently updated their they had an entry from the river to the sea. And they updated the entry to include the words hate phrase, which wasn't there before. They changed language that said it is a slogan heard at pro-Palestinian rallies. They changed that language to say it's a slogan heard at anti-Israel rallies. Mm-hmm. And then they added the word anti-Semitic for the first time. The word anti-Semitic never appeared on the entry from the river to the sea prior to 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I wonder. Have I played this clip of Edward Said on this show?
You have. Wait, the guy with the white hair.
No. This is the Phil Donahue show in the 80s, and it is Edward Said and a member of the ADL. And the ADL, like this thing they say about, we just don't have a partner for peace because they're terrorists. It'd be a lot more believable if they hadn't been running the exact same playbook on every basically organization that represents Palestinians for the entire history of Israel. And I would just like to play this clip. And I do want to do a content warning here. There is a lot of anti-Arab racism in this clip. So just, keep that in mind. And maybe if you don't want to hear it, tune out for a little bit.
What do you think of when you think of an Arab? Somebody with a towel on their head, camel, and maybe some sand. Want to throw a pyramid in there? Well, guess who's here? Right on our stage. This itself would not have been possible not long ago. Edward Said joins us, professor of English, Columbia University, member of the Palestine National Council, to which umbrella organization belongs the PLO. You were born in Jerusalem and raised in Egypt and Palestine. You are currently a United States citizen. Kenneth Jacobson, Director of Middle Eastern Affairs for the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. You don't want to talk to Mr. Said unless the PLO declines or moves away from its stated policy of destroying Israel. If the PLO doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist, then I suppose there's some passionate people who might think you are betraying Israel to even appear with the man. Is it that bad out there now?
It's not that bad out there now. It's been bad for a while in the sense that you have to have something to talk about. When someone says to you his basic assumption in speaking to you is that you don't have a right to exist.
And
where do you go
just
from
real
there?
quick, let's just be clear about what what's being done here is Zionists want to eradicate Palestine. Mm-hmm. They don't want Palestine to exist, and actually they've followed steps toward that since this has been done. So this is all projection right now, and you'll see what Edward Said says, a mutual recognition. That's something that's not acceptable to these racists that the ADL represents.
Yep.
Footing, yes. Mr. Said, Professor Said, how do you respond to that?
No, I think the basic thing is whether people want to talk about peace and about the real issue, which is the land, and whether it can be divided
But
to
I think I hear him saying he
people.
might be willing to discuss that if the PLO would acknowledge Israel's legitimate right to exist.
Well, I mean, what about the Israeli recognition of the Palestinian people as a political factor, as a community with a claim?
But I won't marry you unless you love me, and I won't say unless you say it first, and now we're never going to get married.
No, I'm not saying that. I said, why not have a mutual recognition in which the people recognize each other?
Yeah.
Perhaps we can do something today. We have here a wonderful opportunity. Two moderates from either side sitting
I don't
together,
necessarily
hopefully
accept that
talking to each
definition.
other.
Well, I mean, he doesn't.
You don't want to be called a moderate?
We want to talk to each other.
I'd be happy to be called a moderate, but I really question whether anyone who's supporting the PLO can be defined as moderate.
Well, can I say something?
See, it's the same shit. It's the same shit this country's been doing and just smearing people. The amount of racism Said and every Palestinian's had to put up with. Meanwhile, like I said, suffice to say, you cannot pick a side in this that hasn't done terrorism. And I think some people might be surprised at which side the balance of terrorism lies on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, just look at the damn death toll. It's really not hard to find. New York Times publishes it. Not, I mean, what are we talking about? 20 to 1?
Look at the Nakba. Look
15
at
to 1?
all the it's
25 to 1? All right.
But no mutual recognition. They're all terrorists.
Yeah. I'm gonna read like 5 more of these. Sorry we didn't get to too many IMs, guys. Dave from Jamaica says Matts are spitting today. Both Matts. Agreed. Mitch from SoCal says, just wanted to send love to the crew. You all have been an amazing oasis in this unbelievably terrible time. Finally had to become a member after years of faithful listening. My heart finds a new way to break every day, it seems. But we at least we aren't alone in this fight for basic humanity. Thank you very much, Mitch from SoCal, and thank you for becoming a member. That's really great.
Yeah.
We're with you. Rodney Bottoms has a play based on Rachel Corrie's writing was shut down in New York back in the 2000s. Yep.
Oh, 92nd Street Y is currently disgracing itself by suppressing pro-Palestinian speech too.
Matthew from Indianapolis. I work part-time in the woodworking retail shop with a bunch of MAGA retired military/police boomers, and we've been discussing these issues when it all boils down to having gotten all of the historical details tapered out and having said criticism of Israeli occupation is anti-Semitism, they ultimately see it as Palestine doesn't exist and all these Muslims are trying to bring back the Ottoman Empire. The bombings are justified.
Yep. It's projection. It is simply projection, and it is persuasive because of the historical context. And rest assured that Israel's leaders have taken full knowledge of that and exploited as if it's like an old tool.
Clay Higgins, Roofied Gumbo, says, as a Jew, I lament that the current measure of atonement for collective guilt over the Holocaust is to insist that Jews have a right to kill as many people as possible.
Precisely.
Because for many, including Jordan Peterson that were on Piers Morgan last night, we should look that up, by the way, although he didn't explicitly say it. Did you hear that, Bradley? Okay, for tomorrow. It seems that is the case. It should be remembered that after the emigration to Israel, Holocaust victims were most often spurned or mistreated because of their assumed acquiescence to their genocide. They were seen as weak and poor examples of what the new, more masculine vision of a Jew should be. Yes, that is a racist trope within Israel about Holocaust survivors.
I mean, yeah, I've seen
victims.
I've seen lots of people mention that as like the realization that this Zionism actually isn't like pro-Jewish; it's anti-Semitic.
They were seen as weak and poor examples. On a happier and separate note, Mike Johnson just got crushed under a regulation volleyball. Well, we'll have to look that up too.
Breaking news here. Manchin announced he's not seeking re-election.
Those poll numbers made it quite clear. That
he's going to be traveling He's going to be traveling the country to see if there's a movement for the middle.
Yeah. Or maybe he's running as the no labels candidate, honestly.
He said, I think it also said he ruled out 2024. Maybe this is aspirations for the future.
We shall see.
Jill Stein is throwing her hat in the ring.
Oh. My God, enough.
She saw those RFK poll numbers and was like, oh, I got to get in on this. You guys saw that, right? They were like ridiculously high for third party, which always happens when something.
Well, we got to run, so I'm just trying to. But yes, like no, it's okay. I'm running.
I just realized what time it was myself.
There we go. Billy from Cali, Emma, thank you for your passion on this. It's very cathartic in a world where it's still kind of scary to just speak to this in mixed company. Chris Burdick says it's so frustrating and saddening to see people I know who have always come across to me as liberal or even progressive turn to the worst kind of rabid right-wing reactionary whenever the subject of Israel comes up. They excuse behaviors from Israel that they would rightly condemn if they saw any other nation do it, but they cannot or will not make the mental connection. I know. God, do I know it. And the final I am of the day, Omega. Hi, crew. To go off what Bradley said, experiences with genocide won't make you want to do that to others, but it might cause others to be vulnerable to join retribution factions. Hamas isn't 100% based in this, but I'm tired of people undercutting how Hamas even convinced people to consider joining their ranks. Israeli forces created that monster in more ways people talk about.
There's a little nugget that when like the Israelis say, well, they voted for Hamas, what do you want? It's like they voted based on elections that you forced, and then once they voted for the Hamas, you decided that we're not going to politically engage with the results of their election. It's such a stupid point.
You're not going to have elections for 18 years or 17 years.
Right. Well, because because ultimately, like, Israel got what they want. They wanted, like, people were starting to accept the PLO more than that, and so they needed a new boogeyman. I mean, but Netanyahu's been explicit about this.
Yeah, it's not hard to figure out, but you would have to look outside of like the Western press and actually listen to Muslim and Arab people and also historians.
The main historians of fucking Israel. Even one guy who's recanted, but like when he was being honest about it in the 80s, was saying the exact same things that the legit ones are saying.
All right, guys. Appreciate you all. Check out Left Reckoning, Scam Economy, Doomed, Leftist Mafia, myself. Oh, I will be on a Power Report with my friend Dan from the internet tonight at 9 p.m. because, you know, it's just like healthy for me to keep engaging in this. But I can't stop. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you all. We will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot lights shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive,